Cultivating the Tao has never been an easy path, but for Li Fan, it was tens of thousands of times more brutal. At Great Xian Nation, Xianjing, Grand Tutor's manor, Li Fan sat proudly in the lavish palace. A beauty at his right poured wine, another knelt at his feet serving him, their voices soft and sweet. Grand Tutor, please drink. Grand Tutor, please eat fruit. Below him, rows of civil and military officials bowed deeply, respectfully shouting in unison, "Happy birthday, Grand Tutor." Although he was already over 70, seeing the scene before him, he couldn't help feeling secretly pleased. Li Fan stroked his beard and downed the fine wine in his hand in one gulp, looking thoroughly delighted. His power overshadows the world. The story of it all would be enough to fill a multi-million-word novel. When he, Li Fan, first transmigrated to this world, he was nothing but a poor, struggling scholar. A life like this, what more could one ask for? The entire palace was filled with music, dancers moving gracefully as they poured wine for the guests. At this moment, several men rushed in frantically, shouting, "Grand Tutor, Grand Tutor, falling fire from the sky, it's a divine sign, an auspicious omen, an auspicious omen, it looks like it's flying toward our Grand Tutor's manor." Hearing this, Li Fan furrowed his brows, his face showing signs of surprise. The once lively and noisy hall instantly fell silent. He stood up and quickly stepped out into the corridor, yet before he could reprimand the servants and express his displeasure, he was mesmerized by the sight in the sky. Far off at the horizon, two silver streaks of light, one before the other, like comets, were flying rapidly toward this place. Li Fan stood dumbfounded, murmuring, "This is..." In the blink of an eye, the two streaks of light arrived above Xianjing and suddenly stopped. At that moment, a thunderous voice exploded from the heavens beside everyone's ears. "Dao Xuanzi, don't you push me too far." The event terrified Li Fan, causing him to stagger back several steps, and a term buried deep in his memory surfaced. He couldn't help but exclaim, "Cultivation?" Meanwhile, the people around him had already fallen to their knees, some clasped their hands and prayed. "It is an auspicious omen," others cowed out endlessly. An immortal master has appeared." Li Fan still couldn't believe his own eyes, thinking inwardly, "How can this be?" The two cultivators in the sky naturally paid no attention to the thoughts of the mortals below. Dao Xuanzi, a cultivator with a scholarly appearance, spoke. "Ko Hong, did you really think I'd let you go just because you fled to this land of immortal extinction? Hand over the cultivation method you obtained that day, or this won't end until one of us is dead." Ko Hong let out a cold snort, his voice full of disdain as he replied, "A joke. It's precisely because I lack a core formation method that I've been trapped at the foundation establishment stage for nearly 100 years. Now, my lifespan limit is approaching, and I'm about to turn to dust. Having finally obtained this core formation method, how could I possibly hand it over to another?" Dao Xuanzi sighed and continued, "That's right, the golden core Dao is a path one walks alone. Though there are many core formation methods in this world, there are far more cultivators trapped at the foundation establishment stage." Dao Xuanzi's tone suddenly turned vicious. "Since it's come to this, with the path to longevity right in front of me, how could I possibly let you go?" Hearing this, Ko Hong burst into wild laughter. "Ha ha ha, how laughable. We were brothers for 100 years, yet now we draw blades on each other for a mere chance at survival." Dao Xuanzi sneered without responding, and Ko Hong continued, "I know I am not your match. It seems I won't be escaping my fate today. However, there are so many mortals in this place. I wonder, can you withstand such a dense concentration of the immortal mortal miasma?" As soon as he finished speaking, he circulated his energy, and a fierce surge of spiritual power manifested into a blazing red dragon coiling around him. Dao Xuanzi was not to be outdone. He gently brushed his sword, and his spiritual power transformed into a massive blade surrounded by swirling purple energy. Dao Xuanzi pointed the sword tip toward Ko Hong and asked coldly, "Ko Hong, what do you think you're doing?" Ko Hong laughed maniacally. "If you can't handle the power of the immortal mortal miasma, perhaps I can find a chance to live." The two enormous spiritual forces collided, creating an earth-shaking explosion. Its shockwaves spread across hundreds of miles around Xianjing. The mortals below were horrified, staring wide-eyed at the battle unfolding in the heavens. Li Fan suddenly felt an overwhelming sense of danger, but before he could react, a blinding flash erupted, followed by a series of deafening booms. Rumble, rumble, rumble. The sky and earth seemed to collapse, and he immediately lost consciousness. He had no idea how much time had passed before he finally awoke. At first his mind was foggy, and only after a long while did he remember what had happened before. Li Fan coughed violently, spitting several mouthfuls of blood, trembling as he forced himself up, looking around, muttering weakly, "My wife, my children." It was still night. The once luxurious Grand Tutor's manor was now nothing but ruins. The air was thick with the stench of charred corpses. The civil and military officials from before were all dead without a complete body, and his wives and children likely could not have escaped either. The once prosperous and lively Xianjing has become a hell of blood and fire. As far as the eye can see, there is nothing but mangled bodies and collapsed buildings. After surviving such a catastrophe, likely not even 1 in 100 of the citizens remains. All of this, every bit of it, is because of the 2 cultivators who suddenly appeared. Li Fan had no strength left, sitting limply against the shattered wall, his hearing completely destroyed by the explosion, though that hardly mattered anymore. He raised his head toward the sky and burst into laughter, his voice filled with unwillingness. How can there be cultivators in this world? From the moment Li Fan became an official, he used the power in his hands to search for any possible trace of the immortal path. After I became the imperial tutor, standing above all others, he scoured the entire world. North to the frozen sea, south to the great ocean, east to the ruinous abyss, and west to the linked mountains, and all of Great Xian, there wasn't a single shred of evidence that immortals existed. Li Fan trembled with rage. I had already given up, I had already grown old. Were those 2 people immortals? And where did these immortals come from? Fate is toying with me. At the same time, Li Fan felt a sense of profound relief, because before dying, he finally confirmed that immortals truly existed. At that moment, Li Fan suddenly shouted, "Huanjun!" A surge of energy appeared at his fingertip. A line of glowing words emerged in the darkness. When the true is made false, the false becomes true. Then the characters dispersed and transformed into a luminous screen. In a misty space, 2 lines of text appeared one after another: charging complete, virtualize current scenario and return to the initial anchor point. At the same time, numerous images linked together appeared, quickly filling the entire screen. Huanjun, this is the name Li Fan gave to his unique treasure. Its function is to turn truth into illusion, reality into virtuality. It transforms everything he has truly experienced into a simulated, illusory experience, allowing him to return to a set anchor point. The exact moment he first transmigrated to this world. In fact, this is already Li Fan's second life since transmigrating to the Great Xian nation. In his first life, although he harbored great ambitions, he ultimately remained an ordinary man. He wanted to become the Zhuan Yuan, yet he repeatedly failed the imperial examinations. Only after turning 30 did he finally give up the dream of becoming an official and turn to running a small business instead. He became a common wealthy patriarch in the eyes of others, then married, had children, and lived out an ordinary, uneventful life. It wasn't until he was old and lying on his deathbed, with his life hanging by a thread, that Li Fan finally awakened his unique treasure, Huanjun. That is precisely what led to his unstoppable rise in this second life. Because once the Huanjun system fully charges, it allows him to restart this life and return to the breakpoint to begin anew. However, he cannot restart just yet. There are still important things he must accomplish in this current life. Turning off the luminous screen and returning to reality, Li Fan steadied his mind and began handling the aftermath of Xianjing's destruction by the cultivators. He ordered the soldiers, "Relay my command. Order the garrison camp stationed outside the city to rush to Xianjing and maintain order in the disaster's aftermath." Most of Xuanjing's buildings were destroyed. After Li Fan's trusted garrison camp takes control of Xianjing, not only can they expedite the post-disaster reconstruction, but more importantly, Li Fan can stay in the barracks to oversee the cleanup efforts and secretly send people to investigate the whereabouts of the 2 cultivators. 1 month later, the ruined city of Xianjing had only just begun to recover a semblance of life. Several months later, the ruined city of Xianjing had only just begun to recover a semblance of life. The secret agents returned to reporting to the Grand Tutor, "There is still no news of those two cultivators." Li Fan thought in disappointment. "I shouldn't have gotten my hopes up about this. In that case, I have nothing left to cling to in this life." Standing in the newly rebuilt Grand Tutor's manor, Li Fan opened Huanjin again, virtualized current scenario and returned to the initial breakpoint. Li Fan did not hesitate. Yes. As the space was engulfed in light, Li Fan's aged body transformed, gradually becoming young again, turning into a youth of about 20. Fragmented memories flashed around him, finally stopping at the image of the two cultivators. Li Fan swore, "Dao Xuanzi, Kohong, in 50 years I will still be waiting for you in Xianjing, Huanjin, restart a new life, return to the first year of the breakpoint." The system responded, "Understood." His body was pulled into the temporal portal, and to Li Fan, riches and honor are but fleeting clouds to him. In the next life, he will hunt the immortals. A series of system messages appeared. You returned to Anchor Year 1, overjoyed, you acted out, and were almost forced by your aunt to drink exorcism water from the village witch. Half a year later, you took the provincial exam. Although you placed low, in the 30s, you ultimately succeeded in becoming a Jiren, bringing honor to your ancestors. Anchor Year 2, you took the metropolitan exam and passed. You performed exceptionally well in the palace exam, placing in the second rank, and were bestowed the title of Jinshi. You pulled strings in Xianjing and obtained the post of county magistrate for Jiangnan's Wen County. Anchor Year 3, you began to cultivate your trusted inner circle. You successfully produced a batch of explosives and matchlock rifles. Anchor Year 5, refugees gathered to rebel against Prince Langge's manor. You led troops to the rescue, saving Prince Langge's family. Prince Langge was deeply grateful to you. Anchor Year 6, you were promoted to prefect of Jianghuai Prefecture and married the daughter of the Vice Minister of Rights. Anchor Year 7, your wife bore you a son. Anchor Year 10, Princess Langge gave birth to a son. You personally visited to offer congratulations and presented a carefully prepared gift. Anchor Year 15, the Emperor passed away. Prince Langge inherited the throne, changing the era name to Xianjing. Emperor Xianjing summoned you to the capital, promoted you to Vice Minister of War, and ordered you to lead troops to suppress rebellions. Anchor Year 18, you wiped out the rebel armies. Emperor Xianjing reclaimed your military authority and promoted you to Minister of War, appointing you Grand Tutor to the Crown Prince. Anchor Year 20, the Empress was suddenly implicated in a witchcraft case. Emperor Xianjing was furious and confined her to the cold palace. The Crown Prince secretly sought your help, and you decisively agreed. Through private investigation, you found the person who framed the Empress, clearing her name. However, Emperor Xianjing did not release the Empress from the cold palace. Anchor Year 25, you secretly received news that someone had reported you for privately visiting the Empress in the cold palace. In the same year, Emperor Xianjing was assassinated while traveling. The officials retrieved the Empress from the cold palace. The Crown Prince then ascended the throne, with the era named Kongning. Anchor Year 26, you were additionally ennobled as Grand Tutor and appointed Grand Scholar of the Deliberative Council. Reaching the pinnacle of officialdom, you used this opportunity to eliminate dissent and build your own faction in the imperial court. Anchor Year 30, the people of the world knew only of the Grand Tutor, not the Emperor. Anchor Year 31, the Empress Dowager became pregnant and bore you a son. Anchor Year 38, Emperor Hongning died of depression. Anchor Year 40, the Empress Dowager died of illness. Anchor Year 45, your wife passed away. Anchor Year 46, your eldest son died of illness. Anchor Year 50, two immortals arrived from the ruinous abyss, destroying Xianjing. You narrowly escaped with your life. This simulation has ended. You may choose one of the following options to retain. 1. Antem in your possession during this simulation. 2. Your cultivation realm from this simulation. 3. The simulation memory of one person closely related to you. This memory can be inherited by that person. 4. Forego the above choices to speed up the charging progress. Li Fan regained consciousness and found himself back in that same simple room of his. He wondered, was reality turned into illusion, or was it all a simulation, an error in perception caused by it being too real? Or perhaps, upon reaching a certain level, the line between false and true no longer exists. Forget it, best to look at these 4 options first. The first and second options are self-explanatory. If I ever embark on the path of cultivation, those two would be a great help. Unfortunately, I was merely a mortal in this past life. As for this third option, there's no telling what some. Therefore, stability is paramount. That only leaves the fourth option. Huanjin's virtualization requires charging. When I receive a fatal blow, Huanjin will consume charging progress to automatically protect me. This is also why I was able to escape death several times in my previous life. Thus, the fourth option is the safest and most stable choice. Speed up the charging progress. His information panel was updated. Name, Li Fan, Realm, Mortal Physical, Age, 20/86, Mental Age, 166/1056. Virtualization charged progress 30%. Remembering everything he had experienced, Li Fan grew slightly contemplative. 3 lives, 166 years. So I've already lived this long. And that mental age limit, I remember in my last life it was only just over 900 years, but now it's increased to over 1,000. When one carries too many memories, one's mental endurance reaches a threshold. An excessive burden will crush the soul. This is the so-called erosion of time. However, the mental age limit will increase as one's mental fortitude strengthens. As long as I step onto the path of cultivation, none of this will be a problem. The goal of this life is to learn the secrets of cultivation from those two cultivators. In 50 years, they will descend upon Xianjing. With preparation against their lack of it, I might just have a chance of winning. Li Fan pondered quietly for a while, then continued, perhaps what I can rely on, besides guns and explosives, is that immortal miasma they spoke of, but I can't just wait idly for 50 years. They came from the ruinous abyss in the east. I can first send people deep into the bottom of the abyss to investigate. The most frightening thing in life is having no goal. In Li Fan's past life, he would often wake from the Empress Dowager's bed in the middle of the night, gripped by an immense emptiness and confusion. In that past life, Li Fan had already stood at the absolute pinnacle a mortal could reach. He could not climb any higher, and it would have been the same even in another life. Power, pleasure, after repeating them so many times, they had become as tasteless as chewing wax. Perhaps, in some future reincarnation, Li Fan would have actively chosen to end his own life. But the appearance of those two cultivators showed him a brand new possibility. It was as if he saw a strange, alluring world beckoning to him. Li Fan wants to cultivate. Li Fan wants long life. No one can stop him. Li Fan's gaze at this moment was extremely resolute, his voice confident. Dao Xuanzi, Ko Hong, see you in 50 years. With the experience of 2 lives, everything went as smoothly as water flowing to its destination. Li Fan still participated in the imperial exams, but this time, armed with decades of experience and power, the essays he wrote were naturally far superior to those of his previous life. Provincial exam, metropolitan exam, and palace exam, he placed first in all of them, achieving the legendary triple first and shaking the world with his fame. Afterward, Li Fan still chose to take an official post in Wen County. Although this decision caused much confusion and regret in the imperial court, his request was ultimately approved, thanks to his overwhelming fame, coupled with his crystal-clear understanding of the temperaments of every official in the county. He quickly brought Wen County to heel. He then began to promote and cultivate the trusted subordinates he remembered from his past life. Anchor Year 4, Li Fan searched in secret and found someone who could act as Prince Langya's body double, cultivating him as a trusted subordinate. Anchor Year 5, Li Fan ordered his subordinate to pose as a refugee and attack Prince Langya's manor. Li Fan feigned a rescue, but in reality coordinated from the inside to slaughter Prince Langya's entire family. At the same time, he had the double take his place. From then on, Li Fan secretly controlled Prince Langya's manor. Anchor Year 9, the wedding of Prince Langya and the Chief Grand Scholar's granddaughter proceeded exactly as scheduled. That very night, Li Fan stormed the bridal chamber and had conjugal relations with Princess Langya. Anchor Year 10, Princess Langya gave birth to a son. Of course, the child was Li Fan's seed. Anchor Year 15, the emperor was finally gravely ill. After receiving the Edict of Succession, Li Fan rushed to the capital with his trusted subordinates. After Prince Langya ascended the throne, Li Fan aggressively placed his subordinates throughout the imperial court. With the Chief Grand Scholar's covert cooperation, he easily seized complete control of the situation. Anchor Year 20, after helping his own son become emperor, Li Fan enfeoffed himself as Grand Tutor, stepping out from behind the curtain to stand at the forefront once more, again wielding supreme power over the realm. After this, far from stagnating, the wheels of Great Xian's development did not slow at all. Instead, under Li Fan's will, they turned even faster than before. Anchor Year 35, Grand Tutor's Manor. Li Fan carefully read the secret letter brought by his subordinate. After reading it, he frowned and asked again, "So, the fog over this ruinous abyss dissipates for half a day every 15 years. The spy explained, reporting to the Grand Tutor, "That is correct. The immortal-seeking camp was ordered to station by the ruinous abyss and observe day and night. We finally made a breakthrough a few days ago. After the great fog dispersed, a faint light could be seen shining from the bottom of the abyss. We used a telescope to observe and actually discovered an inverted landscape. Although what each person saw was not identical, there were 10,000 mountains rising and falling, with magnificent structures hidden among them, barely visible. There were towering cities on the plains, bustling with life, with no less than 1,000,000 people. There was even a city in the sky wreathed in rosy light, with all kinds of rare and exotic beasts flying about. It was truly," Li Fan continued, "so they really did come from the ruinous abyss." Although he had known this long ago, now receiving confirmation directly from his subordinate stirred a faint excitement in his heart, yet with years of experience, he did not reveal any emotion. He calmly asked, "Have you found a way to get to the bottom of the abyss?" The spy's face turned slightly pale, and he hurriedly cowed out an apology. "Your subordinate is incompetent. We tried various methods, but alas, as soon as we descend to a certain depth, we are shredded by a sudden astral wind. The astral wind is terrifying. Even our strongest armor cannot resist it for a moment." Hearing this, Li Fan had likely predicted such an outcome, so he was not very disappointed. He waved his hand, signaling the subordinate to withdraw. Li Fan lifted his head to gaze at the night sky, murmuring softly, "It seems I'll just have to wait for you too." Anchor Year 50, Great Xian Nation, Xianjing. In the blink of an eye, another 15 years had passed. The once bustling city had now become eerily silent. Following Li Fan's plan, everything was in place, only the eastern wind remained. At night, with the bright moon hanging high, the two cultivators arrived once more, right on schedule. Ko Hong's roar echoed through the entire city. "Dao Xuanzi, don't you push me too far!" Pow 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 pow, countless sparks flared, tens of thousands of bullets cascading like a waterfall. In an instant all of them fired toward the two immortals. There was no scene of flesh and blood, only rippling waves spreading around the two cultivators, some invisible force blocking the torrent of bullets. Faced with an encirclement of over 1,000 mortals, the expressions of the two cultivators remained utterly calm. Perhaps in the eyes of cultivators, mortals were like ants. Seeing the bullets frozen in the air, Ko Hong couldn't help but wonder inwardly, what are these tiny metal pellets? Ko Hong gently raised his right hand, grabbed a soldier, and lifted him into the air, seizing the gun from the soldier's hands while casually tossing the man aside. Examining the gun closely, Ko Hong assessed it with a single glance and immediately understood its mechanism. A bit interesting, using intricate mechanical structures in place of formations, and the explosive power of mortal things in place of spiritual energy. To think that after several thousand years, the mortals exiled to this land of immortal extinction could actually research such an ingenious object. He shook his head. A pity, it's only effective in this place where the great Tao is incomplete. Outside the land of immortal extinction, it's just a pile of useless scrap metal. As soon as he finished speaking, the gun vanished from his hand, clearly already stored away in his pouch. From high above, Ko Hong looked down and saw countless mortal soldiers hiding in the darkness, his eyes filled with disdain. "Mere mortals, daring to make a move against us cultivators. I originally felt a hint of guilt, but now it seems you're just seeking your own death." Ko Hong shouted coldly, "Tao art, fire dragon's roar." A surge of spiritual power condensed into a massive blazing dragon, plunging straight toward the mortal soldiers below. Explosions roared endlessly. The houses of Xianjing City were like flimsy toys, offering no resistance as they were easily destroyed. The crimson flames, like a starving beast, consumed everything they touched. Suddenly, Ko Hong frowned, startled and horrified. A surge of doubt rose within him. What's going on? That fire dragon's roar of mine is fundamentally not something mortals can withstand. Why are there still so many people alive? Dao Xuanzi's expression darkened slightly as he carefully observed the bullets in his hand. These hidden weapons were soaked in mortal blood. After you were tainted by the immortal miasma, your Dao arts were weakened. We were ambushed the moment we arrived, and the enemy even used the immortal miasma. They were clearly prepared. The two looked at each other, a single thought flashing in both minds. This place is bizarre. We shouldn't stay long. Even though Dao Xuanzi and Ko Hong could point their swords at each other for a cultivation manual, that was a matter between the two of them. But now, with these unexpected variables and before thousands of mortals, two people who had cooperated for hundreds of years instinctively chose to flee first as a gesture of courtesy. Just as they were about to escape, a voice rang out from below. Dao Xuanzi, Ko Hong, if you two flee today, tomorrow, the news that you obtained a core formation method will spread throughout the entire cultivation world. The voice was somewhat aged, yet utterly composed and merciless. The figures of Dao Xuanzi and Ko Hong stiffened, their expressions filled with disbelief. How is that possible? Only the two of us know about obtaining the core formation method. How could the news have leaked? Who is it? For a moment, both plunged into deep fear. And at the same time, while the two were mentally shaken, dozens of artillery shells, trailing long blazing tails, streaked toward them. Ko Hong snapped back to his senses and shouted angrily, "You're courting death." But at that moment, Dao Xuanzi's panicked voice rang out, "Not good, Ko Hong, dodge, quick!" Huh! Ko Hong was stunned, and as his divine sense swept over the incoming shells, his face turned horrified. He tried to dodge, but it was already too late. There was no deafening explosion, only clusters of thick crimson liquid bursting outward, forming a rain of dark red that fell upon the two of them. Ah! Blood-curdling screams echoed across the horizon. At that moment, the terrifying aura that once made mortals tremble rapidly faded from the two cultivators. They resisted for a short while, but soon could no longer endure, falling from the sky into the encirclement of specially trained mortal soldiers. Ko Hong lay motionless on the ground, close to death. Dao Xuanzi seemed to fare slightly better, but was also hanging by a thread. Just then, a soldier shouted from afar, "Immortal Masters, our Grand Tutor has given an order. If you two surrender, your lives can be spared." He surrender. The grievously wounded Dao Xuanzi glanced at his lifelong friend, whose eyes burned with unwillingness but could no longer speak. A cold laugh escaped him. Seeing his expression, Ko Hong understood what he was planning to do. With the last of his strength, he shook his head weakly before sliding his storage ring toward Dao Xuanzi. "Take my storage ring, go." His lips barely moved before his head slumped. Now, Ko Hong has fallen into the sleep of 1,000 autumns. Above, a gold dragon materialized in the sky, writhing in agony as if struggling against an unseen force. But its efforts were futile. It withered away, flesh and muscle vanishing until, as if turning into a tree branch. Only then could onlookers see it clearly. An unremarkable brown branch had taken root within the dragon, devouring it whole. The spectacle, resplendent as fireworks, illuminated the sky for thousands of kilometers. Every living being who witnessed it, human or otherwise, received the same message in their minds and instinctively understood it. Foundation Establishment Cultivator Ko Hong, cultivated for 205 years, achieved his Dao foundation with the mystical object Ik dragon branched in the land of immortal extinction. He was besieged by several thousand mortals and was carelessly injured by the immortal miasma. His cultivation was instantly lost, and his life fan neared its end. Now, his body perishes and his Dao disperses, returning to heaven. A shared sorrow, an inexplicable grief, an overwhelming sympathy. All beings beneath this phenomenon in Xianjing City were drowned in such emotions, unable to pull themselves away. The dazzling vision persisted for nearly an hour before finally fading. Regaining their senses, the soldiers turned their gazes to the remaining aged cultivator, Immortal Master Dao Xuanzi. "Our Grand Tutor has no intention of fighting you to the death. If you give up resisting, our Grand Tutor guarantees your life. A tiger on flat ground gets bullied by stray dogs." Dao Xuanzi's face darkened to the color of storm clouds. his teeth ground together with an audible creak as a chaotic storm of emotions surged inside him: grief, bitter humiliation, and a crushing sense of powerlessness. Hidden in the shadows, watching the scene unfold before him, a trace of doubt arose in Li Fan's heart. When Ko Hong died just now, I seemed to hear a strange voice from the sky. Li Fan sighed inwardly. But what that voice was is no longer important, because hunting immortals in this life is already hopeless. I didn't expect miasma to be so lethal to cultivators. As expected, Dao Xuanzi ignored their calls. He scanned his surroundings, trying to find the mastermind behind this ambush. I do not know who you are, nor do I know your purpose. Today, we brothers were plotted against by you, resulting in death and the loss of our Dao. There is nothing more to be said. His voice turned icy. However, I cannot accept this. Hiding behind mortals, and even using the immortal miasma, a despicable thing scorned by all cultivators. Dao Xuanzi took a deep breath, then continued, My brother, Ko Hong, died at the hands of someone like you. I feel it was not worth it for him. Slowly, he rose into the air once more, looking down upon the wary soldiers with an expression devoid of joy or sorrow. You have all seen my brother's foundation establishment mystical object. Now, I invite you all to take a look at mine. With the wonders of heaven and earth, I build my Dao foundation. Dao Xuanzi said solemnly. My Dao foundation is named Dao Xian. A massive, broken iron sword materialized in the air above Xianjing City. All living beings beneath the great sword's shadow felt their thoughts turn sluggish and slow, like rusted machinery grinding to a halt. I have a sword, I invite you all to view it. The world abruptly brightened. Every soul within Xianjing City froze, as if plunged into absolute stasis. Then, like glass fracturing into countless shards, the entire city splintered apart in an instant. Huanjun, as Li Fan silently recited these words, his charging progress plummeted. Then, his consciousness faded. This simulation has ended. Li Fan regained consciousness, his mind still reeling from the sheer force of Dao Xuanzi's final sword strike. Awe surged through him. Is this a peak foundation establishment cultivator? If it weren't for the immortal miasma, even if I reincarnated 100 times and leased countless schemes, it wouldn't be enough to pose a threat to them. Pulling himself together, Li Fan calmly reflected on the variables that had slipped beyond his calculations. I didn't expect this immortal miasma to directly cause Ko Hong's body to die and his Dao to vanish. I originally thought when they called each other brother of 100 years, it was just talk. I didn't expect their relationship to be so extraordinary. When they were attacked, Dao Xuanzi called out to warn Ko Hong. Ko Hong, knowing he couldn't escape death, willingly gave the core formation method to Dao Xuanzi. Dao Xuanzi, seeing Ko Hong die by ambush, was unable to accept it, and gave up his chance to live, striking out with a mutual destruction sword art. This all shows that the two truly shared a friendship beyond the ordinary. Suddenly, he recalled their first encounter, the Golden Core Dao, a path one walks alone. Immortal methods cannot be cultivated together. If it's like this for men as clock as brothers, what is the cultivation world outside really like? After only a moment of hesitation, Li Fan's resolve hardened once more. No matter how dangerous the path ahead is, I will not waver. Furthermore, with Chuanjun's help, as long as I am careful enough, no predicament should be able to stop me. His mind raced, swiftly formulating several new strategies to deal with them. Last time, I chose to attack both of them at the same time. Perhaps this time, I can choose to win one of them over. After the simulation ended, Li Fan still chose the option to accelerate the charging process. My mental age only increased by a few dozen this time. It seems I'm nearing the cap. If I count the life before I transmigrated, this is already my 5th life. The path to seeking immortality is so difficult. I hope these 50 years won't be wasted. Once again, Li Fan began his 50-year wait. Like clockwork, everything proceeded methodically. Anchor Year 35, the endless ruinous abyss. Li Fan stood silently as he waited, gazing at the ominous abyssal chasm that stretched before him. Time passed indeterminably before the ancient, suffocating mist finally stirred. A low, mournful howl, like that of some primordial beast, echoed faintly from below. As the sound grew louder, those nearby realized it was the voice of the wind. The thick white mist churned, rippling like disturbed water, then the wind intensified, blowing great swathes of mist upward from the abyssal chasm. The mist cascaded into the sky like an inverted waterfall. The gale raged for nearly half an hour before the heavy mist finally dissipated. Li Fan's expression was grave as he raised the telescope and peered into the depths. At first, only darkness greeted him, then, faint pinpricks of light flickered into existence. What Li Fan saw shook him to his core. There was a ruined mountain gate, with collapsed structures strewn everywhere. The cracked ground and walls bore the scars of blades and arcane arts. Overwhelmed, Li Fan adjusted his view. On the sheer face of a cliff, he saw immense words carved into the stone. The immortal Tao is dead. The words were written in dark red, as though inscribed in blood. Even across such an unfathomable distance, the sheer terror and despair radiating from those words struck Li Fan like a physical blow. The immortal Tao is dead. What on earth happened in this place? And what in the world happened to the entire cultivation world? Time flowed onward, and anchor year 50 soon arrived. On Li Fan's 70th birthday, thousands of soldiers stood ready in Xianjing City. Ko Hong whirled around with a furious roar, hovering midair above the city. Dao Xuanzi. Do not push me too far. But before Dao Xuanzi could respond, a voice rang out from below. Ko Hong, you brat. By order of Immortal Master Dao Xuanzi, we have been waiting for you. The voice seemed to come from everywhere at once, echoing through the streets. Along with it came a storm of bullets. Caught off guard, Ko Hong was struck head-on. Shock and fury warred within him. How is that possible? Could Dao Xuanzi have known I would flee here? Then, to his horror, Ko Hong realized that his spiritual qi was draining rapidly as he defended against the attacks. A sweep with his divine sense revealed the truth. Immortal miasma? Dao Xuanzi, you are truly despicable. Dao Xuanzi, meanwhile, was utterly bewildered. What's going on with these mortals? Why are they attacking Ko Hong under my banner? And they can even use the immortal miasma? He hastily explained, this place is rather strange, Ko Hong. These mortals are not under my command. Dao Xuanzi felt as though he had stepped into a carefully laid trap. The sinister aura of this place filled him with foreboding. At this time, an aged voice suddenly echoed from all directions. How can Immortal Master Dao Xuanzi turn his back on us like this? Didn't we agree that as long as we helped you kill this Ko Hong here, and seize his core formation method, you would lead my clan out of this immortal forgiven land? The voice carried both grievance and resentment. Ko Hong's hair bristled with fury. Still say it's not you. Besides you and me, who else in this world would know about the core formation method? Dao Xuanzi's heart sank like a stone. He swept his divine sense across Xianjing City, thinking to himself, this person actually knows about the core formation method. Meanwhile, the voice below continued relentlessly. You should know, we incurred the wrath of the masses for the sake of the immortal miasma you spoke of. Now, public resentment is boiling over. If the immortal master cannot keep his promise and lead us out, I fear it won't be long before my clan dies without a burial place. Falsely accused, Dao Xuanzi's patience snapped. He lunged toward the source of the voice. I've found you. Shameless villain, shut your mouth. Dao Xuanzi was extremely surprised. He found that it was emitted from a strange rectangular object. The voice continued to mock him. Does the immortal master intend to silence us by death right now? Dao Xuanzi clenched his teeth in frustration. What Dharma artifact is this? This person is surprisingly cautious. With a snarl, Dao Xuanzi crushed the device in his grip. To Ko Hong, it looked like Dao Xuanzi, exposed and humiliated, had flown into a rage and sought to silence the man he'd employed. Throwing his head back, Ko Hong let out a roar. Dao Xuanzi! We have known each other for 100 years, yet I never thought I had misjudged you so. You want the core formation method, don't you? Why resort to so many underhanded tricks? I won't run anymore. If you have the skill, come and take it. Dao technique, Flame Dragon's Wrath. A raging fire dragon coiled around Ko Hong, its deafening roar shaking the heavens. The beast locked its blazing eyes on Dao Xuanzi and spewed a torrent of crimson flames straight toward him. With a resigned sigh, Dao Xuanzi uttered a soft incantation. A flying sword materialized behind him in a flash of purple light, streaking forth to meet the flames. Crimson flames clashed against purple sword lights. detonating in violent explosions. Below, Xianjing City was engulfed in a sea of flames, caught in the crossfire. Just then, the aged voice spoke again. This Dao Xuanzi is fickle and indecisive. If he wins, there will be no escape for us. My sons, heed my command. Assist Immortal Master Ko Hong in dealing with Dao Xuanzi. Ko Hong's face lit up with triumph. He's crowed. As the saying goes, he who commits many injustices is doomed to self-destruction. Dao Xuanzi, I never thought that you, who have always prided yourself on being noble, would also break faith and suffer a backlash. Dao Xuanzi, already seething at the hidden schemer's tactics, nearly vomited blood at Ko Hong's taunts. He roared, unable to contain his fury. You fool! Ko Hong shot back, undaunted. Oh really, you fancy yourselves clever, so why are you now deserted by everyone? This is what they call being a victim of one's own cleverness. I have recently mastered a new Dao technique, just in time to send you on your way. Dao technique, imprisoning dragon. Flame-wrought shackles materialized around Dao Xuanzi, weaving into a vast array that encased him in a blazing cage. Break for me! Dao Xuanzi gritted his teeth against the crushing pressure. Drawing a deep breath, the phantom of a rusted iron sword flickered into existence behind him. The sword light launched from his strike was mysteriously augmented. When it struck the flaming cage, the roaring flames froze instantly, then rapidly dimmed. Dao Xuanzi pressed the hand seal with one hand while controlling his sword with the other, shouting loudly, Dao Xian. Immediately after, above him, a massive rusty sword slowly materialized and shot straight toward Ko Hong. The massive sword phantom now hurtled toward him, yet Ko Hong neither dodged nor flinched, his eyes devoid of fear. Let me see whether your Dao Xian is more formidable, or if my Qiu dragon staff is superior. Dao technique, dragon transformation. Heedless of all else, this Qiu dragon branch shot toward Dao Xuanzi like a razor-sharp blade, its passage accompanied by the faint roar of a dragon. At this moment, the aged voice that had been echoing throughout Xianjing City spoke once more. Immortal Master Ko Hong, we shall lend you a hand. Before the voice had fully faded, long trails of fire streaked through the air with piercing shrieks, slamming into Dao Xuanzi from all directions. A storm of blood erupted around him. Caught off guard, Dao Xuanzi let out a pained cry as his aura abruptly weakened. The sword phantom dimmed as well. The Qiulong branch seized the opportunity. Surging against the tide, it shattered the frozen space and embedded itself into Dao Xuanzi's body. Dao Xuanzi let out a bitter laugh, trying to speak but unable to utter another word. In moments, the Qiulong branch consumed him, reducing him to a pile of bones. The strange sound in the sky appeared once again. Dao Xuanzi, a foundation establishment cultivator, cultivated for 201 years and established his Dao foundation with the wondrous item trusted sword Dao Xian. In the immortal Forsaken Land, he fought with another, and was utterly killed at the hands of the foundation establishment cultivator, Ko Hong. Now, his body has perished, and his Dao has vanished. Returned to the heavens. It's that voice again. It also appeared when Ko Hong died before. Dao Xuanzi, Ko Hong looked up at the resplendent sight. He seemed stunned and began muttering to himself in a daze. An elderly man appeared, his hair and beard snow-white, shuffling unsteadily toward Ko Hong with a cane for support. I am Li Fan. Greetings, Immortal Master. I implore the Immortal Master's mercy to save the lives of the 1,000 souls of my clan, Dao Xuanzi. Ko Hong's tone was stiff, clearly not having the best impression of Li Fan. You were the one whose voice was echoing from all directions earlier. A mere mortal like you, actually daring to interfere in a battle between US cultivators. Li Fan clasped his hands. I was merely seeking a slim chance of survival. As I said before, if the Immortal Master had been defeated, my clansmen would surely not have escaped death. Ko Hong sneered. Seeking a slim chance of survival. Ko Hong's expression softened slightly. He sighed. You say, the world is harsh. Who isn't struggling for that one slim chance of survival? Seeing Ko Hong's tone soften, Li Fan pressed his advantage. Before, Dao Xuanzi, the Immortal Master once promised me that if... Before he could finish, Ko Hong frowned and cut him off. For 100 years, Dao Xuanzi has always appeared to be a man of his word, but in reality, he acts without any principles, even deceiving mortals. That great immortal severing formation is incredibly dangerous, even for us. Leaving requires a great deal of effort. How could we possibly take mortals with us? Li Fan froze, his face turning ugly. What, you mean you don't know a way to leave this place either? Ko Hong replied calmly, that's right. Li Fan's mind reeled. The hope he'd clung to for over a century was crushed by the very cultivator he thought would help him, leaving his spirit on the verge of collapse. Yet, having endured multiple lifetimes of hardship, Li Fan had built up an unyielding will. Steadying himself, he said to Ko Hong, this is not a place to talk. Immortal Master, please follow me. Leading Ko Hong through the ruins of Xianjing City, they soon arrived at an underground shelter. With visible hesitation, he asked Ko Hong what the Immortal Master said before, about being unable to take mortals out of this immortal forsaken land. Is it true? Ko Hong frowned. You are but a mere mortal, why would I lie to you? Perhaps a golden core stage cultivator could protect mortals while breaking through that great immortal severing formation, but for someone with a foundation establishment stage cultivation base, it is absolutely impossible. Li Fan asked again, does that mean there is no hope for us mortals to ever leave this world? Ko Hong pondered, then shook his head, his tone dripped with disdain. To leave the immortal forsaken land, one must pass through the great immortal severing formation. With the frail body of a mere mortal, it is utterly impossible to pass through. Besides, you're already old enough to have one foot in the grave. Why are you so obsessed with leaving this place? Isn't it nice being a local emperor? Li Fan refused to relent. If my descendant S could cultivate to the foundation establishment realm like the Immortal Master, wouldn't it then be possible for them to leave? Ko Hong burst into laughter. Ha ha ha, let's not even mention that there isn't a shred of spiritual energy here, making cultivation impossible. Just the fact that immortals and mortals are eternally separated mortals here are covered in miasma. How could they possibly cultivate the path of immortality? He sneered. I advise you to give up on this idea. For mortals like you, if you how to cultivate, you must first go to the outside world to reconstruct your bodies and wash away this miasma. Otherwise, even if the great Tao to immortality were placed right before you, you could see it but never touch it. After several such definitive answers to his questions, Li Fan seemed to finally lose hope. Immortals and mortals are eternally separated. So, you're saying there really is no way? Ko Hong said, inexplicably cheered by Li Fan's despair. There really isn't. If the Immortal Master has no further instructions, this old man will take his leave. Ko Hong said, inexplicably cheered by Li Fan's despair. There really isn't. If the Immortal Master has no further instructions, this old man will take his leave. As if crushed by this cruel truth, Li Fan staggered away in a daze. Ko Hong's expression changed, and a sense of foreboding surged within him. But it was too late. Thick red fog, saturated with immortal miasma, gushed from every corner of the room. Ko Hong's scream was swallowed by the encroaching mist. Outside the bunker, Li Fan's gaze was dark and unfathomable. Since immortals and mortals cannot coexist, then how could a mortal like me ever fully trust your words? Li Fan stared at Ko Hong's confession on the table, his heart sinking into despair. Ko Hong hadn't lied to him. He truly didn't know of any method that would allow a mortal to leave the immortal forsaken lands. His dream of cultivating immortality had crumbled. In a single night, Li Fan seemed to age greatly, not just physically, but in spirit as well. The information from Ko Hong's confession flashed through Li Fan's mind once more. According to Ko Hong, this place is an immortal forsaken land. The cause of it all stemmed from a great change in the ancient cultivation world thousands of years ago. At first, no cultivator paid any mind to this plague among mortals, until the first cultivator was infected by it. The plague was then strengthened and began to spread among cultivators. The vector of transmission was the very spiritual energy that cultivators relied on for survival. The plague, through the spiritual energy of heaven and earth, quickly spread throughout the entire cultivation world. For cultivators infected with this plague, a light case would mean their cultivation base would regress and their realm would fall. A severe case would mean losing their entire cultivation base overnight, becoming no different from a mortal, after which their body would perish and Tao vanish, returning the Tao to the heavens. As cultivators died in droves, despair began to fester among their ranks. Some, driven to madness, turned their fury upon the source of their suffering, the mortals. Thus began the great massacres. Facing the overwhelming might of the immortal masters, mortals had no power to resist. they could only submit to the slaughter. But this carnage did not last long before it was abruptly halted, not out of remorse, but because the cultivators made a horrifying discovery. As they slaughtered mortals en masse, the disease did not vanish with the deaths of the infected mortals. Instead, freed from its mortal vessels, it spread unrestrained through the world's spiritual chi. In an instant, the concentration of the disease in the cultivation world skyrocketed, becoming a true plague, and more cultivators fell. Left with no choice, the cultivators abandoned their campaign of exterminating mortals. But waiting for death was not the cultivators' way. On one hand, a group of cultivators began to research methods to treat and resist this plague. On the other hand, the cultivators proposed the infamous Great Migration Plan. It involved banishing all mortals from the cultivation world to surrounding lesser worlds and shattered grotto heavens that lacked spiritual energy. They would then use spell formations to permanently isolate them, preventing these mortals from ever returning. Originally, there were no more mortals in the cultivation world, but not all offspring of cultivators had the aptitude for immortal cultivation, so, over time, many new mortals were born into the world. Within the bodies of these mortals lingered a shadow of this plague. Though the world had been purged of mortals, not every child born of cultivators possessed the aptitude for cultivation. Over time, mortals reappeared in vast numbers, each carrying the dormant plague within them. Gradually, the plague became synonymous with the divide between immortals and mortals, earning the name Immortal Mortal Miasma. The devastation wrought by Immortal Mortal Miasma left deep scars on the collective psyche of all cultivators. To prevent its resurgence, they established an unspoken rule. As far as possible, avoid the lands where mortals had been exiled to. Over time, these places became known as the Immortal Forsaken Lands. No one knew how many such lands existed, and few cultivators dared to venture into them. That Li Fan had encountered too was already a stroke of great luck. Now, either of these cultivators knew of a way for mortals to leave. How could Li Fan possibly hope for another, more powerful cultivator to stumble upon this place? Moreover, as a mortal, his lifespan was finite. Even with his ability to simulate lifetimes, he could only relive his years within that limited lifespan. He was already 70 years old. His biological age limit was 86. In the remaining 16 years, his chances of encountering another cultivator were virtually zero. How could he not despair? The path to longevity was right before him, so close he could almost touch it, yet impossibly distant. How could he resign himself to this? Remembering the struggles of his past lives and the nearly 3 centuries of waiting, Li Fan couldn't bring himself to abandon the pursuit of immortality. Was there truly no way? Then, like lightning splitting the fog, a realization struck him. There were details he had overlooked before. Then, like lightning splitting the fog, a realization struck him. There were details he had overlooked before. In the silent prison cell, Li Fan's aged voice echoed. How did mortals travel to the immortal Forsaken Lands during the Great Migration? Ko Hong glanced at Li Fan and couldn't help but mock him. What, you still haven't given up? So what if you manage to get out? At 70 years old, you still want to pursue immortal cultivation? After a moment of silence, Li Fan suddenly asked, if you could return to the cultivation world, would you be able to cultivate again? Ko Hong was momentarily stunned. What? Li Fan promised. If you help me find a way to the cultivation world, I might take you with me when the time comes. Ko Hong flared up in anger. You treacherous villain, still trying to trick me? Li Fan remained expressionless. Truth or lie, it's still a shred of hope. Will you abandon this chance at survival and waste away in this tiny corner of the world? Hearing this, Ko Hong fell silent. After a long while, he finally let out a heavy sigh, then responded slowly. If I'm not mistaken, what they used back then to migrate the mortals should have been Dharma artifacts similar to flying boats or flying shuttles. In ancient times, the cultivation world was teeming with people, sects were numerous and prominent, and it was incredibly prosperous. Such transportation-type Dharma artifacts were very popular. It's a pity that a great cataclysm befell heaven and earth later on. Every cultivator feared for their own safety and began to act alone. Flying boats and shuttles were rarely seen after that. Li Fan asked, a great cataclysm in heaven and earth? Are you referring to that bizarre great plague? Ko Hong shook his head, his expression grave. Although the immortal mortal miasma is bizarre, it couldn't shake the foundation of cultivators. The reason the immortal miasma was able to run rampant was that most of the cultivators in the world had perished in a great calamity. Li Fan suddenly recalled the ruined sect he had glimpsed deep within the abyssal chasm, and his mind stirred. A great calamity of heaven and earth? Could it be that immortal techniques cannot be cultivated by more than one person? Ko Hong sighed heavily. Correct, immortal techniques cannot be cultivated by more than one person. Ko Hong spoke with unconcealed yearning. In ancient times, no such restriction existed. Countless great sects thrived, openly accepting disciples and passing down their teachings. Cultivators had masters to guide them, fellow disciples practicing the same technique to spar with, and peers to consult when facing difficulties. The cultivation world was brimming with vitality, a magnificent sight to behold. But then, the Great Reformation struck. One day, cultivators suddenly realized their cultivation efficiency had drastically declined. While cultivating, they could sense how many cultivators across the world were practicing the same technique, and to their horror, they discovered that the more people cultivating the same technique, the slower everyone's progress became. At first, restraint prevailed, and everyone attempted to search for solutions, but as decades passed, countless cultivators found their progress frozen, their lifespans running out. Eventually, the killing intent they had been suppressing could no longer be contained. Speaking up to this point, Ko Hong's voice grew solemn, and a trace of fear appeared in his eyes. Masters and apprentices, martial brothers and sisters of the past, all turned into mortal enemies in an instant. A calamity that swept across the entire cultivation world began. Anyone who practices the same method as me is obstructing my path to the Tao, and it's a fight to the death. Every sect became a slaughterhouse overnight. Even rogue cultivators hiding in remote mountains or secret realms weren't spared, because those who practiced the same techniques could sense each other's locations. The endless, relentless killing raged on for who knows how long before finally subsiding. By then, the once prosperous cultivation world had withered into desolation. All sects had vanished, leaving behind only solitary cultivators, each walking their path alone. Ko Hong recounted the ancient upheaval of the cultivation world with measured words. Li Fan listened, his emotions surging, but an even greater question arose within him. Since immortal techniques cannot be cultivated by more than one person, how do cultivators practice now? What is the cultivation world like today? Ko Hong explained patiently. In today's cultivation world, if you want to cultivate, you have no more than a few choices. One is to join the Myriad Immortals Alliance. The Myriad Immortals Alliance is a loose coalition formed by numerous cultivators. You can exchange for cultivation methods and resources within the alliance using contribution points. You can earn contribution points in the alliance by accepting and completing missions, or by trading with others. The second is the Five Elders Council. The Five Elders Council is an organization founded by 5 top-tier mighty figures, and its influence is immense. As long as one has the aptitude for cultivation, they can voluntarily join and choose a cultivation method. The price is that you must sign a soul contract and serve the 5 Elders Council for a certain period of time. Ko Hong explained patiently. From your description, why does it feel like cultivation methods aren't that scarce in the cultivation world? Ko Hong snorted. That's because the methods obtained this way are all incomplete. Incomplete? Li Fan was taken aback before realization dawned. So you must keep laboring to acquire the next level of the technique? Exactly. Ko Hong said bitterly. These methods were all newly compiled by the major powers over the years. Reaching the peak of qi condensation is already their limit. To advance further and establish a Tao foundation, one must switch to a new cultivation method, and the same applies to realms above foundation establishment. Li Fan was shocked. Switch methods? If I have to switch methods and start over every time I break through to a new realm, doesn't that mean all my previous efforts will be for nothing? Ko Hong shook his head. That won't happen. All who cultivate must practice a fragment of the supreme primordial true scripture. This scripture is not a cultivation method, but more of a secret technique. Its function is to allow a cultivator to willingly disperse their realm without significant loss. After dispersing their cultivation to switch to another method, they can quickly catch up to their original realm. Li Fan marveled. To think such a miraculous method exists. He then smirked coldly. It's just that this fragment appeared at such a convenient time. Only in this way could the many cultivators of the world be made to accept constantly changing their cultivation methods. Ko Hong sighed deeply. But what can be done about it? A true method is hard to come by. Dao Xuanzi died without ever knowing that the reason I snatched the method and ran was not just because it was a core formation method, but because it was a true method that could lead directly to the nascent soul realm. Hearing that, Li Fan instinctively looked at the ring on his hand, thinking to himself, nascent soul, true method. He had confiscated all of Ko Hong and Dao Xuanzi's belongings, storing them inside this storage ring. Perhaps due to living through multiple lifetimes, his mental power far surpassed an ordinary man, so, despite normally requiring divine sense at the Qi refinement level to use this storage ring, he could use it effortlessly. Still, unless he found a way out of this immortal forsaken land, these treasures were useless to him. He hadn't bothered inspecting them yet. Next, after Ko Hong introduced him to some common knowledge of the cultivation world, such as how a cultivator's demise can trigger celestial phenomena within a certain range, he finally returned to the main topic. I once heard a rumor that for thousands of years, mortals from the immortal foreskin lands have been secretly returning to the cultivation world, but it's mostly just idle talk and baseless rumors from the streets, without any concrete evidence. Li Fan's spirits lifted. There's no smoke without fire. Sometimes, rumors are the truth of the matter. Li Fan declared resolutely. As long as there is a sliver of hope, I will not give up. Ko Hong muttered under his breath. I really don't know how an old man with one foot in the grave can still be so restless. Li Fan pretended not to hear him. Instead, he solemnly vowed, as long as you help me find the way to the cultivation world, not only will I release you and let you return with me, but I will also return all of your and Dao Xuanzi's belongings, including that nascent soul true method. Ko Hong's head snapped up, sudden hope blazing in his eyes. Are you serious? Li Fan nodded, of course. Ko Hong resolve hardening. Fine, in that case, I will do my utmost to help you. Hoff Li Fan had deceived him multiple times, making Ko Hong question the man's promises. He was like Li Fan, unable to abandon even the faintest glimmer of hope. Thus, with Ko Hong's assistance, Li Fan scoured historical texts throughout the world, hunting for fragmented clues about the Great Migration era. At the same time, Li Fan mobilized armies to excavate ancient tombs on a massive scale, hoping to uncover traces. Though this stirred public outrage and daily petitions from officials urging restraint, he forcibly suppressed every objection. Yet too much time had passed since the Great Migration era, and his remaining years in this lifetime were far too short. 16 years later, in Anchor Year 66, Li Fan's end was near, and still, he had found nothing. After ordering Ko Hong's release, Li Fan went to the underground chamber beneath the Grand Preceptor's estate alone. This body is already so frail, like a candle flickering in the wind, it could be extinguished at any moment. Before this life ends, I should first confirm the items within this storage ring. With a thought, he emptied the contents of his storage ring, laying them out one by one. His gaze immediately locked onto a bamboo scrolls that pulsed faintly with golden light. As Li Fan picked up the bamboo scrolls, the information flowed naturally into his mind. Thousand Mechanisms Jade Cosmos Scripture, Nascent Soul Technique, Current Practitioners 0. The Nascent Soul Realm. A wave of longing surged through Li Fan's heart, yet, at present, he was still merely a mortal, with no divine sense. Though he could use the basic functions of a storage ring, this nascent soul technique remained utterly beyond his grasp. He could only stare at it longingly, unable to glimpse its contents. His gaze then shifted to a rusted iron sword lying nearby. Rusted sword Dao Xian. According to Ko Hong, after a cultivator perishes, their foundation establishment wondrous item will lose its wondrous nature as the cultivator's body perishes and Dao vanishes. Li Fan ran his fingers over the unremarkable iron blade, but his attention was fixed on the sudden notification from Return to Truth. Rechargeable item discovered, rusted sword Dao Xian. Proceed with recharge? After a moment of contemplation, Li Fan chose yes. The rusted sword vanished silently, and a line of text appeared. Anchor charge progress, current anchor points 1. Li Fan's heart stirred. According to the feedback from Truth returning, when the anchor charge progress reaches 100%, a second anchor point will be unlocked. In the future, everything will be virtualized. When choosing to return, I can choose to restart from any of the anchor points. If a second anchor point can really be unlocked, it will be so much more convenient. Although wondrous items are rare, the cultivation world is boundlessly vast. There must be an endless stream of them, as long as I can leave this immortal forsaken land and escape these shackles. After carefully storing all the items back into the storage ring, including the nascent soul technique, taking a deep breath, Li Fan closed his eyes, as if engraving this moment of frailty deep into his heart. Then, without hesitation, he activated Return to Truth and ended this lifetime. In the darkness, scenes flashed rapidly before his eyes, then, familiar words appeared in his vision. This simulation has ended. This simulation has ended. 1. Retain an item you possessed in this simulation. 2. Retain your cultivation level in this simulation. 3. Retain the simulated memories of one closely associated individual. These memories can be inherited by that person. 4. Forfeit the above choices to accelerate charging process. This time, Li Fan chose the first option, retain one item. He had attempted to trick the system by storing all his items in the storage ring at the end of his previous life. Unfortunately, it didn't work. The storage ring, the nascent soul technique, spirit stones, and artifacts all surfaced one by one. Naturally, Li Fan selected that nascent soul technique. Looking at the bolded words on the notice board, Li Fan felt a bit disappointed. Bound? Does this mean this cultivation method will permanently exist within Truth Returning? But that was still within his expectations. This opens up many more possibilities for planning. The Great Migration ended thousands of years ago, and its traces have long been buried. Excavating ancient tombs on a large scale would cause far too much upheaval. Even with the immense control I wielded over the imperial court in my last life, it still provokes significant opposition. It would not be sustainable for a newly established court to attempt such a thing immediately. However, if I begin laying the groundwork now, spending 20 years preparing, perhaps I can still reshape the world's mindset. Time flowed onward, and Li Fan's sixth lifetime began. Everything followed its predetermined course, yet under Li Fan's subtle machinations, countless minute changes rippled through the world. In Anchor Year 3, whispers of immortals descending began spreading across Great Xian. By Anchor Year 5, the School of Historical Inquiry emerged in spectacular fashion, bearing several ancient texts. Its scholars journeyed to the capital for an audience with the emperor. The unparalleled sophistication of these long-lost works sent shockwaves through the empire. The ancient texts were titled Change, Way and Virtue, Southern Flower, the Analects, the Great Learning. These are all famous classical Chinese texts. In Anchor Year 6, the emperor suddenly fell gravely ill and was confined to his bed. None of the imperial physicians could devise a cure. At this critical moment, the School of Historical Inquiry presented a pill to the throne, claiming it had been discovered in an ancient tomb. They said it was likely left behind by an immortal and held the power to revive the dead and regenerate flesh. They suggested that taking it might save him. At first, the emperor ignored them, but as his condition worsened day by day and he teetered on the brink of death, he swallowed the pill in desperation, treating it as a last resort. To everyone's astonishment, the pill proved miraculous. Within days, the emperor recovered fully. Anchor Year 11, Jianghui Prefecture uncovered a major tomb robbing case, arresting a team of over 100 tomb robbers. The prefect of Jianghui Prefecture, Li Fan, did not dare to act on his own authority. He wrote a memorial, sent it to Xianjing City via the 800 Li Express, and requested His Majesty's judgment. A full month passed before the emperor's decree finally arrived. They were not sentenced to death, only to be enslaved and sent to the capital. By Anchor Year 15, the emperor fell gravely ill. Desperate to prolong his life with similar pills, he dispatched over 100,000 soldiers to excavate ancient tombs across the land, searching for traces of immortal elixirs. By the year's end, the emperor passed away with regret, naming the Prince of Langya as his successor on his deathbed. With that, Li Fan once again seized covert control of the empire. Under his influence, the fervor for tomb raiding and historical exploration surged across the land. Anchor Year 23, following the excavation of an ancient tomb, a lost piece of history was gradually pieced together. The dynasty that could be traced was named Qi. Immediately, he ordered his subordinates to focus on excavating tombs from the Qi dynasty. He further issued a proclamation: anyone who discovered a tomb from the Qi dynasty would be granted a marquisate. By anchor year 25, the tomb of Yi Xing, the first emperor of the Qi dynasty, was finally found. Upon hearing the news, Li Fan personally led his trusted men to the site and sealed off the surrounding area. Once all obstacles were cleared, Li Fan entered the tomb's interior, surrounded by his retinue. The main passage stretched for hundreds of meters, and its walls were adorned with vivid murals, still strikingly clear despite thousands of years of age. At the end of the series of murals lay the main burial chamber. The chamber soared 40 to 50 meters high, stretching thousands of meters in length and width. Its ceiling mimicked a starry sky, inlaid with countless luminous pearls. The interior was modeled after the layout of a mountain sect, with peaks rising one after another, submerged in a sea of clouds. It was unknown how this sea of clouds was created. Somehow, the clouds remained fixed within the chamber without drifting away, and even after thousands of years, they had not dissipated. Invisible pathways connected the peaks, and as the group made their way through, they marveled in astonishment. Li Fan thought to himself, "These are truly the methods of an immortal." At the summit of the highest peak stood a simple thatched hut, its once fertile fields now overgrown and abandoned. Only as they approached did they realize that the thatch of the hut was woven from countless fine golden threads. Clearly, this humble dwelling was where Yi Xing's coffin lay. At Li Fan's signal, the group opened the hut's door. To everyone's surprise, there was no trace of Yi Xing's remains inside. Only a wooden memorial tablet stood quietly within. Inscribed on the tablet were several golden words: Tomb of Yi Xing, an outer disciple of the Taiyan sect. No other objects remained. Li Fan thought to himself, it seems that although this person joined a sect called the Taiyan sect, he remained just an outer disciple and never set foot on the path to immortality. He was ultimately exiled to this place by the cultivators. Even in death, he could not forget his sect, identifying not as an emperor, but always as an outer disciple of the Taiyan sect. However, according to Ko Hong, all the sects in the world should have perished during the Great Calamity before the Great Migration era. It seems now that there must be a hidden story behind this. This Yi Xing was likely entrusted by the cultivators of the Taiyan sect to oversee the Great Migration of this world. I just wonder if we'll be able to find the flying boat used for the migration back then. Finding no answers in the main burial chamber, Li Fan ordered members from the School of Historical Inquiry to dig around the area, hoping to uncover clues from the surrounding auxiliary tomb chambers. Several days later, bad news arrived, filling Li Fan with fury and helplessness. It turned out that among the burial records of one auxiliary tomb chamber, there was mention of a flying boat. Unfortunately, that very tomb chamber had been looted long ago. Judging by the damage, the theft had occurred over 1,000 years prior. Again. In a rare outburst of rage, Li Fan smashed several nearby objects. Every time I glimpse hope, it slips away like flowers in a mirror, or the moon reflected on water, utterly unattainable. Those around him fell deathly silent. It took a long while before he calmed his turbulent emotions. He ordered, a reward to the world. Whoever finds clues related to the immortal ark will be annulled as a marquis of 1,000 households. Another 10 years passed, then, in Anchor 35, things took an unexpected turn. On this day, Li Fan received an urgent report. The tomb of an immortal has been discovered? Li Fan was stunned, then overjoyed, quickly pressing for details. The secret agent respectfully replied, reporting to the Grand Tutor, a few days ago, a group of people were excavating an unremarkable grave when they were suddenly injured by a mysterious force, suffering heavy casualties. The ancient Sea King camp dared not be negligent and dispatched men to investigate overnight. Even with many highly experienced veterans, they could not disturb this small tomb into the slightest. Hearing this, Li Fan was utterly exhilarated. He immediately ordered his subordinates, "Bring the immortal miasma and open the tomb at once." Li Fan arrived and deployed immortal miasma, finally shattering the force surrounding the tomb. "The tomb gate has been opened," Li Fan turned to his soldiers and solemnly warned, "Be careful during the excavation. Report to me immediately if you find anything resembling a flying boat." All the soldiers roared in unison, "Yes." A moment later, a secret agent dashed over and said, reporting to the Grand Tutor, "There is an object resembling a flying boat among the burial goods." Hearing this, Li Fan was utterly shocked. He immediately bolted toward the boat. Inside the burial chamber, standing out prominently among the array of funerary objects, was a small wooden boat. This small wooden boat was none other than the flying boat Li Fan had been yearning for. Thanks to a message carved into the walls by the tomb's owner before his death, Li Fan finally learned the full story. It turns out the tomb's owner was named Qian Hong, a Foundation establishment stage cultivator. Over 3,000 years ago, he was hunted by his enemies and, with nowhere else to go, hid in this immortal forsaken land. The immortal forsaken land is completely devoid of spiritual energy, and he didn't have many spirit stones on him. Before long, his spirit stones were depleted. Without spirit stones to replenish his spiritual energy, his cultivation base deteriorated day by day. He speculated that 1 or 2 flying vessels should have been left behind when mortals were exiled here thousands of years prior. So he searched tirelessly, spending decades before finally discovering Yixing's tomb. Indeed, there was a flying boat inside, but to his despair, the core array powering it was damaged, and since he had no skill in artifact forging, he couldn't repair it. Even if he had managed to fix the vessel, he had no spirit stones to use as fuel, and his cultivation at the time wasn't enough to power it. At that point, Qian Hong finally abandoned all hope of leaving this immortal forsaken land. He lived out the rest of his life in obscurity, posing as a mortal. Before his death, he carved his story onto the tomb walls, hoping that if any cultivator ever stumbled upon his resting place, they might return his bones to the cultivation world. The few items he left behind were meant as an advance payment. A broken stone stele, with the word halt faintly visible, it was none other than a curio of heaven and earth. Li Fan touched the stele, but returned to truth showed no reaction. What a pity! To force his way into the tomb, he had used a large amount of mortal miasma. Tainted by it, the halt steel fragment had become nothing more than an ordinary rock. Still, Li Fan wasn't overly concerned. Now that he knew the tomb's location, he could always return for it in his next life. When Li Fan picked up the jade skull and sensed the information they contained, his heart lurched. Lesser Qi Purification Method, Qi Refinement Technique, Current Practitioners, 1. Yushui Record, Foundation Establishment Technique, Current Practitioners, 1. For a moment, he thought Qian Hong might still be alive and that this was a trap. But after a moment, he realized something. No, more than 3,000 years have passed. Forget a Foundation Establishment cultivator, even a golden core cultivator would have turned to dust by now. But why is someone cultivating these methods? Li Fan quickly understood. Could it be that the methods have a master copy? After the Great Calamity, many cultivation methods were compiled by major powers like the Myriad Immortals Alliance and the 5 Elders Council, so there must be a master copy. When the management of these major powers sees a method that no one is cultivating, they bring it out again for people to redeem. In other words, over the past 3,000 years, who knows how many owners these 2 methods have had. Ruthless, absolutely ruthless. Li Fan thought, inwardly speechless. After this moment of reflection, Li Fan turned his attention to the third item, the Taiyan boat. This vessel had been used by none other than the Taiyan sect to transport mortals. Perhaps it was precisely because this flying boat had broken down that it had been left behind. Holding the Taiyan boat in his hand, Li Fan's body trembled slightly from sheer ecstasy. Taiyan boat, after changing hands for thousands of years, it has now fallen into my grasp. Hundreds of years of waiting, and my wish is finally granted. Li Fan revealed a sinister smile, then muttered under his breath, "Although the Taiyan boat is damaged, there's no need to worry. Qian Hong couldn't fix it, and Li Fan can't fix it either. But there is someone who can." 15 years later, in Anchor Year 50, Ko Hong and Dao Xuanzi once again arrived in Xianjing City. A familiar voice suddenly reverberated across the sky. "Dao Xuanzi, don't you push me too far." Dao Xuanzi coldly replied, "Ko Hong, did you think I would let you go just because you fled to this immortal forsaken land? Hand over the cultivation method you obtained that day, or else I'll..." Just as the two were about to battle to the death, at this time, a booming laugh echoed up from Xianjing City below. "Is a mere core formation method really worth the two of you fighting to the death?" Ko Hong and Dao Xuanzi both stiffened, then glanced downward. Who's there? Such arrogance! Insolent! A silver-haired elder called out loudly from the Grand Preceptor's estate below. Why don't you two come down for a chat? After entering inside, Ko Hong and Dao Xuanzi exchanged a glance, both instantly on high alert as they turned their wary gazes toward Li Fan. Li Fan leisurely raised the wine cup in his hand, a warm and friendly smile blooming on his face. Ha ha ha, please. Long ago, my ancestor said on his deathbed that in a future generation, 2 people might come from the east of the abyssal ruins and set foot in the capital, and that this would be the opportunity for our clan to escape this place. For thousands of years, my clansmen have been skeptical. To have it proven today calls for a grand toast. Ko Hong spoke first. May I ask your name? Li Fan replied with a smile. This old man is Li Fan. Dao Xuanzi frowned, studying Li Fan. From what you're saying, your ancestor foresaw our arrival thousands of years ago? And what do you mean by an opportunity to escape this place? Li Fan's expression darkened slightly. What, you two don't believe me? Ko Hong chuckled and shook his head. This matter is too fantastical. The 2 of us have roamed the cultivation world for 100 years, and we've never heard of any art of deduction that can predict events 1,000 years into the future. Li Fan straightened, lifting his chin with an imperious gaze. I wonder if you two have ever heard of the Taiyan sect? Ko Hong and Dao Xuanzi exchanged glances, visibly startled. Could it be the sect from ancient times that was renowned throughout the world for its art of deduction? Li Fan exhaled inwardly in relief. Hen nodded with deliberate calm. Relax, my ancestor was indeed a member of the Taiyan sect. Li Fan narrowed his eyes as he gazed into the distance, his expression tinged with nostalgia. Back then, although my ancestor joined the Taiyan sect, he disliked cultivation and was instead obsessed with the arts of deduction and calculation. That would have been fine. But who could have expected the great cataclysm, when all mortals had to be migrated? Li Fan spoke with measured eloquence, his voice thick with emotion. With my ancestor's early qi condensation stage cultivation base, no one would have forced him if he was unwilling. However, my ancestor saw the panic among his family members, so he volunteered to take charge of the mortal migration. Afterwards, he remained here with his family. Dao Xuanzi spoke up. I see. I wonder, fellow Taoist, why did you stop the 2 of us? Li Fan sighed. No cultivator has set foot in this land for thousands of years. Seeing you 2 today, I knew you were the ones my ancestor prophesied, the key to my clan's escape, and when I saw you were about to fight to the death over a core formation method, I had to hurry out and stop you. Dao Xuanzi admitted frankly. You must find us laughable, fellow Taoist, but you may not know that cultivation methods are hard to come by in the outside world. It's quite normal to turn on each other and fight to the death for a single scroll. Li Fan shook his head repeatedly. How could it come to this? Dao Xuanzi probed cautiously. From your tone, fellow Taoist, it seems. Li Fan declared with pride. Indeed, before his passing, my ancestor left behind a technique, one that leads directly to the Golden Core realm. Ko Hong was overjoyed. Wonderful. If my brother obtains this technique, the 2 of us need not fight any longer. Dao Xuanzi drew a sharp breath. Li Fan took a sip of wine, speaking unhurriedly. My ancestor's lifelong wish to be able to return to the Taiyan sect. Before his death, aside from this cultivation method, he also passed down a Dharma artifact called the Taiyan boat. Although it is damaged, my ancestor once used the art of Taiyan to calculate that many years later, 2 cultivators would arrive in this place, one skilled in sword techniques, and one who loves artifact refinement. They could help his descendants repair the Taiyan boat and escape this forsaken land. Dao Xuanzi was utterly stunned, taking a long moment before he regained his composure. That's spot on. My brother Ko Hong is devoted to the Tao of artifact refinement, and my specialty is precisely sword techniques. This art of Taiyan, is it really so incredible? Ko Hong, too, was left dumbfounded. To have such unfathomable power with only a qi condensation stage cultivation base is truly hard to imagine. Li Fan chuckled. After a pause, he added, Talk is cheap. Please follow me to have a look at the method first. Dao Xuanzi's face lit up with joy as he stood and followed. Seeing Ko Hong also rise to join them, he immediately grew wary. What, brother, you've already obtained one core formation method. Are you still not satisfied? Ko Hong gave an awkward laugh. Fine, I won't go over then. Dao Xuanzi snorted coldly and quickened his pace to catch up with Li Fan. Seeing that Ko Hong had indeed stayed behind as expected, Li Fan finally relaxed. He knew his plan for this lifetime had already half succeeded. He led Dao Xuanzi to a hidden mechanism, which opened the way to an underground chamber beneath the Grand Preceptor's estate. Just as Dao Xuanzi was about to step inside, a sudden chill ran down his spine, freezing him in place. He swept the surroundings with his divine sense, then gasped in alarm. Immortal miasma. Li Fan smiled. One can't be too careful, we are but mortals, and to protect our family's greatest treasure, we have no other choice. Dao Xuanzi forced a strained smile but refused to take another step forward. Instead, he retreated slightly. Li Fan said nothing more. He entered the chamber alone. Retrieving a jade slip from a chest, he didn't step back out, merely holding it where Dao Xuanzi could see. Fellow Taoist, please look, this is the cultivation method left by my ancestor. Thousand Mysteries Jade Cosmos Golden Chapter Nascent Soul Realm Method Current Cultivators 0. Dao Xuanzi's breathing grew heavy, a surprised glint flickering in his eyes. A nascent soul method. It's actually a nascent soul method. Li Fan's lips curled into a smug. He thought to himself, everything is as I predicted. Li Fan asked with a smile, how about it? Was this old one telling the truth? Earlier, in front of your brother Yu Hongji, I only said that my ancestor passed down a core formation method because I was afraid he would have malicious thoughts again. Dao Xuanzi said, nodding gravely, your mind is sharp, fellow Taoist, I am impressed. Then, with renewed fervor, he added, rest assured, fellow Taoist, my brother Ko Hong is an expert in the art of artifact refinement. I will definitely persuade him to help you repair the Taiyan boat with all his might. Li Fan laughed. Ha ha ha, then I'll be counting on you. Once it is done, I will present this method to you with both hands. Within the Grand Preceptor's estate, Ko Hong and Dao Xuanzi communicated through transmission. So, what this Li Fan said wasn't false, he really does have an ancestral core formation method. Dao Xuanzi nodded, that's right, I said it with my own eyes. A trace of malice arose in Ko Hong's voice. A mere mortal. I'll just take the method by force. Dao Xuanzi swiftly dissuaded him. Although this Li Fan is just a mortal, he is, after all, a descendant of the Taiyan sect. You saw that terrifying art of deduction earlier. It's truly fearsome. If we take it by force, there's no telling what other tricks he might have up his sleeve. We're just helping him repair the Taiyan boat. It's not a difficult task. Why stir up more trouble? On the surface, Dao Xuanzi was persuading Ko Hong not to use force to seize it, but in his heart, Dao Xuanzi thought otherwise. If we take it by force and Li Fan gets desperate, it would be disastrous if he reveals that the cultivation method is actually a nascent soul method. The next day, they laid eyes upon the Taiyan boat Li Fan had spoken of. Ko Hong, thrilled at the sight of such a treasure, eagerly took it in hand to examine it closely. As expected of an item from the Taiyan sect, the ingenuity of its refinement, the profundity of its spell formations, they both far exceed what I have learned. If I can repair it, my Tao of artifact refinement will surely advance. Li Fan said solemnly, in that case, I'll leave it to you two. Feel free to ask for anything you need. This old man will certainly provide it. Time lost all meaning in cultivation. What appeared to be a simple wooden boat took Ko Hong and his companion nearly a full year to restore to its original condition. The day the Taiyan boat was finally repaired, Li Fan hurried to meet them. The day the Taiyan boat was finally repaired, Li Fan hurried to meet them. Ko Hong spoke with some pride. The Taiyan boat's core power spell formation, its size-changing spell formation, its dust-cleaning spell formation, and others have been fully repaired. Only the defensive and offensive spell formations were limited by materials, so we could only perform simple repairs. Breaking through the great immortal severing formation shouldn't be a big problem. But dealing with an attack from a cultivator would be a bit of a stretch. Li Fan didn't seem concerned. It's no matter, as long as I can get out of the great immortal severing formation and return to the cultivation world. With my ancestors' keepsake, I will naturally find a way to return to the Taiyan sect. Ko Hong's eyes flickered briefly before enthusiastically explaining the Taiyan boat's operations to Li Fan. This Taiyan boat is powered by spiritual energy, and must be controlled with divine sense. 1,000 meters it can transform between 3 levels of size and form. Its first form is only 10 meters long and 2 to 3 meters wide. A slightly larger form is 100 meters long, and when expanded to its maximum, it's a full 1,000 meters in length. The two of us don't have many spirit stones in reserve, but what I've placed inside as fuel is enough for you to leave this place in its second form. However, piloting this Taiyan boat requires the divine sense of at least the Qi condensation stage. I wonder if you, fellow Taoist, need us to do it for you. Before Ko Hong could finish speaking, he watched the Taiyan boat expand slowly under Li Fan's command, transforming from a tiny toy into a proper small boat. Seeing this, Ko Hong praised, "Fellow Taoist, your methods are truly extraordinary, to be able to control the Taiyan boat despite being immortal." Ko Hong praised, "It is but a minor trick, not worth mentioning. I must also thank you too, fellow Taoist. After being trapped for 1,000 years, there is now hope of escape, all thanks to your efforts." Dao Xuanzi, at this time, was already growing impatient. "Now that the Taiyan boat is repaired, I wonder." Li Fan laughed. "It has long been prepared, fellow Dodged. Please come with me to retrieve it." On the third day, Ko Hong and Dao Xuanzi bid farewell to Li Fan. "Fellow Taoist, we don't have many spirit stones left. If we stay in this immortal forsaken land any longer, we risk our cultivation bases declining, so we came today to bid you farewell." Li Fan sighed regretfully. "There are still matters my clan must attend to here. I cannot accompany you on your journey." Ko Hong spoke warmly. "No matter, fellow Taoist, if you get out, you can come find me in Lingtian City, within the Tsonian mountain range." As he spoke, Ko Hong handed Li Fan a map. "This is the map of the area near the exit of the Great Immortal Seeking Formation, which I drew from memory as you requested, fellow Taoist. There are no blank jade lips here, so I had to use paper and a brush." Li Fan accepted the map solemnly, offering repeated thanks. After further pleasantries, Ko Hong and Dao Xuanzi finally transformed into 2 streaks of light and departed. Above the abyssal chasm in the east, Ko Hong and Dao Xuanzi flying in midair, Dao Xuanzi murmured, "When we first entered the immortal Forsaken Lands, I thought we'd emerge grievously wounded, or even end up dead. Who could have imagined that we'd get such an opportunity in a twist of fate?" Ko Hong nodded in agreement, then sighed regretfully. "That Li Fan has a remarkable mentality. He's quite a character. It's a pity his great limit is approaching. Even if he can return to the cultivation world, he only has a few years left to live." Dao Xuanzi said coolly, "Without achieving longevity, all else is illusion. Did we not turn against each other and fight to the death precisely for a chance at longevity?" Ko Hong suddenly asked, curiosity stirring. "Speaking of which, what cultivation method did that Li Fan give you?" Dao Xuanzi did not answer directly. Instead, he smiled. "It couldn't possibly be the same one you have, could it? Don't worry, once I return, enter closed-door cultivation, and break through to the golden core stage, I will definitely not forget the 3 things I promised to do for you." Dao Xuanzi glanced at the thick fog above the abyssal chasm, then suddenly shot forward, plunging into it ahead of Ko Hong. "The protective formation must not yet disperse. I wonder, brother, do you dare to venture through?" Ko Hong's laughter echoed. "Ha ha ha, what is there to fear?" Li Fan did not care how Ko Hong and Dao Xuanzi would react upon returning to the cultivation world and discovering they practiced the same technique. At this moment, he had already settled all his affairs. Steering the Taiyan boat, he arrived above the abyssal chasm. By all logic, he should have waited for the white fog to dissipate before exploring the abyssal chasm, but Li Fan was already 71 years old. The next time the fog lifted was still 14 years away. By then, at 85, his lifespan would be nearing its end, and he would barely be able to walk, let alone pilot the Taiyan boat. So it was better to investigate the immortal slaying grand array sooner rather than later. After all, there was nothing left in this life worth clinging to. He could begin his next life at any time. Guiding the Taiyan boat, Li Fan slowly descended into the depths of the abyssal chasm. Without divine sense to scout the path, he could only rely on his vision to navigate. Thick fog enveloped everything, painting the world in an endless white, giving Li Fan an eerie sense of unreality. The silence was absolute. Only the sound of his own breathing reached his ears. He continued downward, his focus razor-sharp. Suddenly, the Taiyan boat shuddered violently, as if it had struck something invisible. Li Fan instantly tensed. Is this the astral wind layer? According to Yuhong, the wind blades here can easily tear a mortal's body apart. Even Foundation establishment stage cultivators need to protect themselves with spiritual energy. Thank goodness for the defensive spell formation, otherwise the consequences would be unimaginable. Half an hour later, he carefully controlled the Taiyan boat, and after half an hour of effort, he finally passed through the astral wind layer. The vibrations finally subsided, replaced by an infinite light ahead. He successfully escaped the immortal slaying Grand Array and, upon reaching the cultivation world, fortuitously obtained a rare and peerless technique. Within a century, he forged his golden core. From then on, his cultivation journey was smooth sailing. 1,000 years later, he attained the Tao and ascended to the immortal realm. In the immortal realm, Li Fan started as a lowly immortal official, cultivating step by step until he eventually became an immortal emperor who stood supreme over all. Then, Li Fan shattered the spatial barriers of the immortal realm and ascended to the divine realm. Starting as a mere miner in the divine realm, Li Fan cultivated to the divine king realm after 10,000 years, becoming the most formidable existence in the divine realm. Afterward, Li Fan endured countless hardships to ascend to the primordial divine realm, only to become a lowly gatekeeper there. Once again, he had to toil from the very beginning. As Li Fan awoke, the myriad images from before receded like a tide in his mind, leaving only faint traces behind. A wave of sudden dizziness struck him, and he instantly lost all sense of direction. Li Fan muttered, "Was everything just now an illusion from the illusory light layer? Huh! Why has the boat turned around?" With that, Li Fan knew he had now entered the inversion layer. Surrounded by endless white mist, the Taiyan boat was like a drop of water in an ocean, unable to discern up from down or where to go. Li Fan fell into deep thought, pondering over the events that had happened before. It seems I only woke up because the Taiyan boat automatically navigated out of the illusory light layer. I lost consciousness in the illusory light layer just now, yet the Taiyan boat was able to travel to the inversion layer on its own. Perhaps I can let the Taiyan boat control its own direction, while I just provide the power to accelerate. An intuition from the Taiyan boat was transmitted to him, telling him which way to go. Following the Taiyan boat's guidance, he accelerated forward. As expected, by following the direction the Taihung arc took on its own, he smoothly arrived at the fourth layer, the flowing fire layer. Seeing this, Li Fan was overjoyed. That's it, this Taiyan boat was specifically responsible for migrating mortals 1,000 years ago. The cultivator in charge must have left a backdoor in this Taiyan boat, allowing it to automatically pass through the immortal Forsaken continent. Having tasted the first sweet sip of success, he made no deliberate attempt to rein it in, simply pouring power into the Taiyan boat and letting it soar freely across this immortal Forsaken continent on its own. Profound ice layer, flowing fire, profound ice, thunderstorm. These places seemed exceptionally perilous, but the Taiyan boat always managed to narrowly avoid one devastating crisis after another. Sixth layer, thunderstorm layer. The journey was thrilling but ultimately safe, and Li Fan smoothly arrived at the final layer, the darkness layer. The Taiyan boat advanced silently through the darkness. Li Fan's steady composure wavered with excitement. Once I pass through here, the cultivation world lies ahead, 6 lifetimes of reincarnation, finally. Then, in the all-consuming darkness, the eerie sound instantly filled the entire darkness layer, reverberating endlessly. His surroundings remained pitch black, yet it felt different now. The protective barrier around the Taiyan boat shattered in an instant, and the vessel itself began to break apart. His charging progress plummeted violently. Taking one last, deep look into the abyss beyond, Li Fan whispered, "Return to truth. This simulation has ended." Li Fan regained consciousness. He felt a flicker of confusion. What on earth was that thing just now? When Ko Hong and Dao Xuanzi passed through the great immortal severing formation, they didn't encounter that thing in the darkness layer. Why did it? Could it be a measure that only targets mortals? It seems the safest plan is still to wait for the dense fog to clear and for light to appear at the bottom of the abyssal ruins before exploring. Though he faltered at the very last instant, The harvest of this life far surpassed anything he had dared to expect. The moment he chose to retain the Taiyan boat, he stepped without hesitation into his seventh life. Until Return to Truth finished charging, he refused to take any reckless actions. In Anchor Year 4, he covertly led his trusted subordinates to Qian Hong's tomb. This time, he used a spray infused with immortal miasma to erode the tomb's defenses bit by bit, weakening the power of the halt steel fragment until it could no longer pierce through steel armor. Then, clad in steel armor, Li Fan entered the tomb and placed his hand upon the steel. Rechargeable item discovered. Halting steel fragment, damaged. Proceed with charging? Li Fan selecting, yes, he lamented silently. It's a shame it still took some damage, but the anchor charge progress increased by 25%. If I do this just 3 more times, I can unlock the second anchor point. The rest of Qian Hong's tomb held nothing of value for him. After ordering his men to reseal the burial site, Li Fan departed. In Anchor Year 5, Li Fan was unable to resist any longer and journeyed to the abyssal chasm in the east. He told himself, I'll just take a look, I won't go down. Gazing across the endless sea of fog, his vision seemed to pierce through space, reaching straight into the chasm's depths. At this very moment, if I were to pilot the Taiyan boat, I could absolutely travel smoothly all the way to the immortal realm. The thought erupted in his mind unbidden. For some reason, it could not be suppressed, instead swelling like a tide until it drowned all reason. That's right, I've already waited this long. Do I really have to wait another 15 years? So what if truth returning isn't fully charged? How can I achieve the great Tao if I'm this timid? That thought kept urging him on without respite. I already tested it once in my last life. As long as I'm careful to avoid that unknown monster in the darkness layer, I can leave this damned place. A cacophony of voices clamored in Li Fan's ears, his vision blurred, his eyes turning bloodshot. As if bewitched by the whispers, step by step, he moved forward, drawing ever closer to the endless abyssal chasm. Just as Li Fan was about to be pulled in, destined to plummet and shatter into pieces, a brilliant light erupted from the depths of the abyssal chasm. It pierced through the immortal slaying grand array and struck his eyes. The endless mist suddenly cleared away, stark words blazed before him. The path of immortality is no more. Every reckless, desperate impulse to throw himself into the abyss in pursuit of immortal cultivation vanished in an instant. A cold sweat drenched Li Fan as clarity returned. What's happening? Just now, countless voices in my head were luring me into the abyssal ruins. If not for the light from the bottom of the abyssal ruins piercing through the great immortal severing formation, I would have been smashed to pieces. 15 years later, in Anchor Year 20, Return to Truth had finally reached full charge. Without further hesitation, he boarded the Taiyan boat and navigated through the thunderstorm layer. His journey tense but uneventful, he stopped just above the darkness layer, waiting patiently. A strong wind rose, disturbed by the unnatural gale. The frenzied thunderstorm gradually quieted, and its fury waned. Pinpricks of light emerged from the darkness, coalescing into a vast, unbroken tapestry of radiance. Li Fan ignored the inverted spectacle. Instead, he took advantage of the fleeting illumination to search for the monster lurking in the abyss. Yet he found nothing. As the light began to fade, Li Fan gritted his teeth and made his move. He sent the Taiyan boat hurtling downward at full speed, straight toward the abyssal chasm's depths. The eerie cry sounded again, closing in on him in an instant. Li Fan thought to himself, it seems my guess was right. This monster holds great malice towards mortals. Perhaps its mission is to devour any mortal who comes near this place. At that moment, Li Fan abruptly veered the Taiyan boat, altering its trajectory in a sharp, graceful arc. Instead of descending, the vessel now shot upward at several times its previous speed. Upward, further upward. Engines roaring at full power, the Taiyan boat surged back up into the thunderstorm layer, just as a wrathful howl erupted from below. Looking toward the abyss, a trace of doubt flashed in Li Fan's heart. Humph? It stopped chasing at the thunderstorm layer? It stopped at the edge of the darkness. I can use the light from the thunderstorm layer to see what it really looks like. By the last, fading glimmer of light, Li Fan finally saw the true form of that monstrous creature lurking in the darkness below. It was a colossal leviathan of a whale, so immense that words failed to describe it. Even from Li Fan's considerable distance, he couldn't take in its full size, just its gaping maw alone filled his entire field of vision. Li Fan felt a headache coming on. This giant whale is so enormous, and the Taihang arc is so small, yet every time I pass through, it manages to find me. I can only try other methods. Fortunately, I have plenty of chances to try. Over the next 15 years, he had attempted to force his way through the darkness layer several times, yet with every entry into the darkness layer, the great whales seemed to get better at detecting him. Given the Taiyan boat's flight speed, he simply couldn't outpace it. Each time, after a brief period of dodging the whale, he would be forced to retreat in disarray. In anchor year 35, this time, Li Fan hid himself within the thunderstorm layer well in advance. Only on the days when the white fog recedes does the great whale take a while to notice me, seemingly delayed by something. Perhaps with this extra bit of time, I'll be able to fly to the bottom of the abyssal chasm. This time, Li Fan decided to risk it all, aiming to fly through the darkness layer at maximum speed and make it through before the great whale could react. A strong wind began to rise. The Taiyan boat operated at full power, bursting forth with astonishing speed. The illusory scenery drew closer and closer. Yet, just as he was about to reach it, the great whale's terrifying cry rang out once more, rapidly approaching Li Fan's position. Li Fan saw his surroundings turn black and knew he had been swallowed by the great whale once again. He roared viciously, "Return to truth. This simulation has ended." Li Fan let out a frustrated sigh. It took him a long time to calm his emotions. This time, Li Fan chose to accelerate the charging process. Li Fan was slightly surprised when he looked at his own information panel. Humph? The upper limit of my psychological age didn't increase? It seems I've already reached the limit, so it's not increasing anymore. Li Fan could only comfort himself like this. Good, I still have 748 years to squander. In anchor year 4 of his 8th life, Li Fan once again opened Qian Hong's tomb. Discovered item convertible to charge, halt steel fragment, damaged, proceed with charging? Seeing the prompt from Return to Truth, Li Fan's mood finally improved a little. At this moment, the charging progress of the next anchor point had reached 51%. Li Fan mused with a hint of self-mockery. To the very least, this life wasn't a complete waste. In anchor year 5, the white mist receded, but with the virtualization charging progress yet to reach 100%, he could only wait patiently. In anchor year 20, Li Fan made an attempt and failed. In anchor year 35, Li Fan made another attempt and still failed. However, these attempts were not entirely wasted. At the very least, he had gotten increasingly proficient at maneuvering the Taiyan boat, and could now endure the great whale's relentless pursuits for longer periods. In anchor year 50, Li Fan did not choose to force his way through the darkness layer again. He had grown old, and his reactions and mental acuity had significantly declined. Even if he made an attempt now, he saw no possibility of success. So, he chose to meet two old friends, to see if he could glean any clues from them. On the day of Li Fan's 70th birthday, Ko Hong and Dao Xuanzi arrived right on time. Dao Xuanzi, do not push me too far. As he listened, Li Fan suddenly felt a pang of nostalgia. Once again, he used the pretext of a golden core technique to lure the two of them to the Grand Preceptor's estate. After 3 rounds of wine, Li Fan produced a scroll painting. It depicted a terrifying, colossal great whale that hid within the darkness. Li Fan inquired, "Have either of you ever seen such a monster?" Li Fan pondered for a moment and added, "My ancestor once said on his deathbed that if I ever had the chance to escape this forsaken land, I wouldn't need to worry about anything else. With the protection of our Sex Taiyan boat, I should be safe. But the final layer, where a giant whale lurks, requires the utmost caution." Ko Hong glanced at the painting, his brow furrowing slightly with disbelief. "There's such a ferocious beast in that pitch-black, empty place? How come I didn't see it?" Dao Xuanzi, however, seemed to recall something. "Could it be?" Li Fan asked, a note of expectation in his voice. "Oh, fellow Taoist seems to know of this beast?" Dao Xuanzi shook his head. "I've only seen records of it in an ancient text. It is said that in ancient times, there was a sect named beast taming. The beast taming sect had no profound cultivation methods, relying solely on their beast taming art. they could control the exotic beasts of heaven and earth to fight for them. Among the most famous exotic beasts controlled by the beast-taming sect, this giant whale seems to be one of them. Seeing this, Ko Hong said hurriedly, "Now that you mention it, I remember, I think it was called a rift-splitting whale?" Li Fan's heart stirred, and he quickly asked, "Do either of you know how to avoid this rift-splitting whale?" Ko Hong and Dao Xuanzi both offered awkward, sheepish smiles. "I've only heard fragments about it. Such an exotic beast disappeared from the cultivation world thousands of years ago. How could we possibly know its habits?" Li Fan couldn't help but feel disappointed. In the end, I still have to rely on myself, huh? He handed the Thousand Mechanisms Jade Cosmos scripture to Dao Xuanzi, sent the two men on their way, and then ended this lifetime. This was his 9th life. In this life, Li Fan once again opened Qian Hong's tomb, intending to absorb the halt steel fragment to increase the charging progress of the next anchor point. Unfortunately, Return to Truth showed no reaction whatsoever. In anchor years 20, 35, and 50, Li Fan tried every method he could think of, but under the watchful, predatory gaze of the great whale, he still failed to charge through the darkness layer. He's too old now. He can no longer outwit or outfight the giant whale. He won't force it. He'll just completely give up control of the Taihang boat and let it slowly drift toward the bottom of the abyssal ruins from the very beginning. Astral wind layer, illusory light layer, inversion layer, flowing fire layer, profound ice layer, thunderstorm layer, darkness layer. Li Fan drifted into a hazy sleep. When he awoke, he was shocked to discover that the Taiyan boat was already nearing the bottom of the abyssal chasm. Li Fan was utterly perplexed. What's going on? Why didn't the realm-splitting whale appear this time? But that did not stop him from revving up the boat's power and speeding at full velocity toward the scattered points of light. Can't miss this chance, full speed ahead. But as Li Fan accelerated, the roar of the great whale suddenly erupted. Li Fan deeply furrowed his brow. Why did it suddenly discover me now? Then, like a lightning bolt illuminating the night sky, Li Fan abruptly understood. I see, this rift-splitting whale cannot see, or rather, it ignores objects moving at a constant velocity. As long as I maintain the same speed, I can pass through this great immortal severing formation safely. Having unraveled this crucial point, Li Fan could not help but laugh aloud. Ha ha ha, the last shackle keeping me in this immortal forsaken land has been completely broken by me. With that, the final shackle binding him to this immortal forsaken land was completely shattered. Amid Li Fan's wild laughter and the great whale's furious roars, the Taiyan boat burst through the rift between the two worlds, about to return to the cultivation world. His surroundings blurred, and he felt himself traverse the distance of multiple worlds in an instant. The immense pressure made Li Fan grunt sharply, and blood streamed from his nose and eyes, but he paid it no mind whatsoever. Drawn endlessly upward, Li Fan turned his gaze back toward the immortal forsaken land. From such vast distance and soaring height, he witnessed a sight that would be seared into his memory for all eternity. It's the rift-splitting whale. Thousands upon thousands of realm-splitting whales, moving non-stop in great pods, carved out swathes of pitch-black space from the void. Meanwhile, the immortal forsaken land that Li Fan had left receded ever farther from the cultivation world. The Taiyan boat broke through the immortal slaying grand array, emerging within a stretch of mountain ranges. Below lay a bottomless pit which emanated an aura faintly similar to the abyssal chasm. Rolling mountains wreathed in clouds and mist stretched into the distance, making for a magnificent and awe-inspiring sight. On the tallest of these peaks, an immense city hung suspended in the air. Li Fan wanted to laugh heartily, but could only manage an uncontrollable cough while spitting up fresh blood. He was far too old. He had already been teetering on the brink of life and death, and the pressure from crossing the immortal slaying grand array had utterly drained his remaining vitality. Yet being able to catch a single glimpse of the cultivation world before dying meant this lifetime had not been lived in vain. An aged yet hopeful voice rang out, "Return to truth. This simulation has ended." After the darkness, Li Fan's consciousness gradually returned. After 9 lifetimes, across nearly 500 long years, he had finally brushed against the threshold of cultivation. According to his initial plan, Li Fan had intended to accelerate the charging process, the sooner Return to Truth finished charging, the sooner he could leave for the cultivation world. Yet, upon seeing the list of available items to choose from, Li Fan hesitated once more. Listed clearly among them was the halt steel fragment. After some consideration, Li Fan ultimately decided to retain the steel fragment. He wanted to take this opportunity to verify a certain hypothesis. Since he had not chosen to accelerate the charging, he would have to wait 20 years for it to complete. In the third anchor year, he arrived outside Qian Hong's tomb. He did not choose to use the immortal miasma to break into the tomb, but instead directly took out the halting steel fragment from Return to Truth. After this steel fragment brought from the previous life appeared in the world, a wondrous change occurred. It actually began to slowly dissipate, like an ice block under the scorching sun, and the formation generated by the halting steel fragment inside Qian Hong's tomb clearly grew much stronger. Gazing at the scene before him, Li Fan thought to himself, "It's just as I thought, mystical objects of heaven and earth possesses uniqueness. Two identical mystical objects should not exist in the world, yet, with Ilyuanzin's ability, created an identical one from thin air. The consequence is that the two mystical objects spontaneously merged, ultimately becoming one." Li Fan narrowed his eyes and ordered his subordinates to begin breaching the tomb using the immortal miasma spray. The enhanced halt steel fragment was indeed extraordinary. Even with the use of immortal miasma, it took considerable effort to whittle down its power. Li Fan entered Qian Hong's tomb, his gaze falling on the halt steel fragment. There were no major changes in its appearance, it merely looked slightly less dilapidated. Li Fan thought with regret, Return to Truth still can't absorb it. It seems this steel needs to be repaired more completely before it has new energy for Ilyuanzin to absorb. After ordering his subordinates to move the steel fragment out of the tomb chamber, he stored this enhanced halt steel fragment in the Taiyan boat, keeping it as part of his belongings for his future journey to the cultivation world. In anchor year 20, when Return to Truth was about to finish charging, Li Fan ruthlessly executed a group of corrupt officials and oppressive landlords, seizing all the gold, silver, and jewels their families had accumulated over generations. He would still need to interact with other mortals after arriving in the cultivation world, so gold, silver, and valuables had to be prepared in advance. Additionally, since cultivators occasionally incorporated gold and silver into artifact forging, there was no need to worry about these metals losing their value completely. Besides wealth, food was also crucial, yet grain was the foundation of the state, and Li Fan demanded an enormous amount at once. Officials fiercely opposed him. While capital merchants jacked up prices to profit, Li Fan skipped explanations, during morning court, before all civil and military officials. He enlarged the Taiyan boat to its maximum size and suspended it high above the imperial palace like a vast dark cloud over Xianjing city. Commoners who saw it dropped to their knees in reverence. Meanwhile, the court officials, witnessing Li Fan's display of immortal power, shifted their attitudes entirely. All prior complaints about Li Fan's killings and seizures instantly vanished. The people eagerly helped gather provisions, officials cooperated fully, and after executing the profiteering merchants, the Taiyan boat was completely loaded. With all preparations made, Li Fan had no more attachments to the mortal world. He piloted the Taiyan boat. Arriving once more above the abyssal chasm, he relaxed his mind, allowing the Taiyan boat to proceed at a constant, self-guided speed. The entire journey took only a few hours, yet to Li Fan, it felt far longer than all the centuries he had experienced before. After the interminable wait, Li Fan finally broke through the immortal slaying grand array and arrived in the cultivation world. As he acclimated to the rending sensation of crossing between two worlds, Li Fan peered out excitedly from the Taiyan boat. Yet, as he looked at the surrounding scenery, Li Fan was left utterly dumbstruck. Li Fan was somewhat bewildered. What's going on? Why is the place I emerged different this time? He unfolded the map drawn from his memories, trying to locate this sea, but finding nothing after repeated checks. Forget it, I'll just take it one step at a time. Not knowing what had gone wrong, Li Fan put away the map and sighed. Fortunately, I still have the Taiyan boat, otherwise I'd be trapped here until I died. I only hope I can find a habitable place before its spirit stones run out. Not one to indulge in self-pity, Li Fan immediately chose a direction and steered the Taiyan boat forward. searching for any trace of civilization. The sea was truly vast and endless. He flew for 7 full days and nights without spotting the slightest sign of human presence. Fortunately, the Taiyan boat was stocked with plentiful provisions, so survival was not a concern. 10 more days passed, and the Taiyan boat gradually slowed down, its energy nearly depleted. Just as Li Fan was growing anxious, he finally spotted the faint outline of a ship in the distance. Just at this desperate moment, the faint shadow of a ship finally appeared on the distant sea. When he looked at the ship through his telescope, he was left utterly speechless. As he drew nearer, however, he was struck speechless. It was a ship, all right, but one on the verge of sinking. It seemed to have been through some kind of attack. There was a massive hole in its hull, and 2/3 of it was already submerged underwater. Several dozen people struggled in the waters around the half-sunken ship, clearly all crew members from the vessel. Most of them could barely swim, clinging desperately to broken planks to stay afloat. Just as Li Fan hesitated over whether to reveal the Taiyan boat and rescue them, one survivor shouted with all his strength, "Don't panic, everyone, I've already sent a signal to the Immortal Master, he'll come save us soon, hold on just a bit longer." Hearing this, Li Fan's mind stirred. Immortal Master? He put away the Taiyan boat, jumped into the sea, and quietly swam toward the group of people. Silently blending into the crowd, Li Fan also pretended to struggle for survival. After a good while, a stream of light flew over from a distance and halted above the group. Seeing that hope had arrived, they quickly cried out one after another, "Immortal Master, save me! Immortal Master, help!" How noisy! The voice sounded male, but his clothing and face were unclear, as though obscured by a layer of gauze. The man then snorted coldly and cast some unknown arcane art. Li Fan found himself unable to make a sound, and the entire crowd also fell silent. The Immortal Master then flew to the side of the sinking ship. With one hand, he raised the vessel out of the water. After that, a beam of light shot out, and the large hole in the ship's hull was repaired in a matter of moments. Then, he looked at the group of people floating in the sea. With another cold snort, he made a grasping motion, and lifted his hand. Li Fan and the others felt themselves grabbed by an invisible force, lifted up, and flung toward the repaired ship. Thud, 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 the rescued mortals were thrown roughly onto the deck like dumplings dumped into a pot. After everyone had been saved, the Immortal Master flew above the ship and spoke with a sharp tone. Who sent the signal? The man who had spoken earlier to comfort the group quickly knelt on the ground. The Immortal Master waved his hand, releasing the spell on him. He kowed out repeatedly as he said, "This lowly one, Su Changyu." As Su Changyu? Not him. The Immortal Master cut him off. "You know the rules, right? Once we reach the destination, I have nothing to do with any of you. I have never seen you, and I don't know who you are, understood?" Su Changyu cowed out again. "I understand. Before we departed, the elders in my family explained." Halfway through his words, his voice vanished again. It turned out the Immortal Master had nodded in satisfaction and then casually silenced Su Changyu once more. He cast some unknown arcane art, and the vessel swiftly began cutting through the waves toward a specific destination. Ignoring the mortals, the Immortal Master moved to the ship's prow. An eerie silence fell over the ship, which continued for the better part of the day. Only after nightfall did a faint, shimmering light finally appear in the distance. At first glance, it was a prosperous island, the distant murmur of a bustling city carried on the wind. Even this far out, hundreds of large ships were moored at its docks, making for a truly magnificent sight. Their ship, however, did not sail toward the main docks. Instead, it circled halfway around the island, heading for a more sparsely populated area on its far side. Quietly, the ship slipped into a natural waterway leading into a cavern. It navigated the narrow, winding passages of the cave for some time before finally coming to a stop. Once the ship was secured, several burly figures clad in black came aboard to receive them. The black-clad men acted as if the Immortal Master were invisible. They simply herded everyone off the ship. None uttered a single word throughout the entire process. After leading the group into a spacious hall, one of the black-clad men finally spoke. "You will rest here tonight. There is plenty of food in the hall. You may take it as you wish. Tomorrow, someone will take you to get your identities registered." With that, the black-clad man turned and left. A long time passed before the immortal master's silencing spell finally wore off. Then, people began to talk in small, hushed voices. What rotten luck, to actually run into a sea monster. There were nearly 100 of us when we set out, but now, less than half have survived. I don't know what my father was thinking, insisting on sending me to this great world to cultivate. If you asked me, how can cultivating be as fun as listening to music? Exactly. Back in my homeland, I was the son of the Prince of Jinan. What riches and glory couldn't I enjoy? What's so good about this godforsaken place that... It was then that the man named Su Changyu spoke up. What's the point of saying this now? Which of your families didn't pay a huge price to send you all here? Instead of complaining, you might as well cultivate patiently. If you can really become an immortal master, not only will you have a hope for long life, you'll also have a chance to return to your homeland and bring your family out. As Li Fan listened to their conversation in the shadows, he began to understand just who these people were. These people, I'm afraid they're just like me, mortals exiled from a land of immortal extinction. Li Fan stroked his chin, lost in thought. It's just that, in the land of immortal extinction they came from, the existence of the cultivation world doesn't seem to be a secret, and they've already developed a mature smuggling route? While Li Fan was lost in thought, a chubby hand gently patted his shoulder. The young man clapped Li Fan on the shoulder with an air of overfamiliarity. Brother, you look a bit unfamiliar. May I ask what official post you held in Dal? Or perhaps you are a wealthy merchant from one of the provinces? Li Fan swatted the young man's hand from his shoulder, then fixed him with a cold, silent stare. The chubby youth instantly felt as if a venomous serpent had locked eyes with him, and a chill crept up his spine. Goodbye. My goodness, that scared me to death. That old man looks like he's been in a high position for years. He's no simple character. Before dawn broke the next day, they were all roused from their slumber. A middle-aged man walked toward them. The man said coolly, "In a moment, I will take you to get your household registration. Once you have it, you will officially become members of Liuli Island." The man added, narrowing his eyes, "Remember, do not say what should not be said. Otherwise, I cannot guarantee your safety. You are all residents of the western Dayu Island. Your island was destroyed by a windstorm, which is why you fled here as refugees. If anyone asks, this is what you'll say." Everyone understood the clandestine nature of their arrangement, and nodded in agreement. Following the middle-aged man's instructions, Li Fan and the others changed into sets of ragged, worn-out clothing. Following the middle-aged man's instructions, Li Fan and the others changed into sets of ragged, worn-out clothing. Li Fan noted that although their group numbered several dozen, the island's residents mostly gave them only cursory glances before looking away, clearly accustomed to such happenings. They wound through the residential districts of the city for what felt like an eternity before finally arriving at the front of an official compound. They did not enter through the main gate. After a servant went inside to announce their arrival, he returned and led them through a side entrance on the left into a large hall. The hall was spacious. 2 or 3 other batches of people, over 100 in total, had already gathered before Li Fan's group arrived. Even so, it did not feel crowded. The middle-aged man gave them a look, signaling for them to wait patiently. Soon, it was Li Fan's group's turn. The middle-aged man greeted, "Manager Zhao. Are these all refugees here to register?" Manager Zhao appeared to be in his 50s or 60s, though somewhat aged. His eyes were unusually sharp. After scanning the crowd, he said with a faint, knowing smile, "Sun Jiang, these refugees all seem rather wealthy or noble, don't they?" Sun Jiang didn't fluster. "That's right. They were all wealthy families on Dayu Island." As he spoke, Sun Jiang pulled something from his robes and discreetly passed it to Manager Zhao. Unfortunately, without the protection of an immortal master, disaster struck, and all their wealth and glory vanished like a bubble. Now, they can only travel thousands of miles to seek refuge on our Liuli Island. Manager Zhao glanced at it, pocketed the item, and then sighed. The windstorm raged a few days ago, and even our Lil Island was affected. The western islands suffered even heavier losses. It's said that over 200 islands were razed to the ground, and countless mortals perished at sea. Fortunately, the immortal masters were merciful and ordered us to rescue the refugees. It's a good thing that your Tianbao Lui is so dedicated. Rest assured, I will report this truthfully to the island lord. When the immortal master's rewards are handed down, you will surely get your share. Afterward, Manager Zhao began processing the registration procedures for everyone. Before long, it was my turn. Before long, it was Li Fan's turn. When Manager Zhao looked at Li Fan, a strange light flickered in his eyes. Manager Zhao asked, "What is your name?" Manager Zhao asked, "Li Fan." "Come, place a drop of your blood here." Manager Zhao's brush moved with swift, flowing strokes, writing the words Li Fan on a rectangular object. It resembled both jade and paper, yet was either. He then handed it over. Li Fan bit his finger and let a drop of blood fall. The blood, as if possessing a spirit of its own, seeped into the two words. Unlike his attitude with the others, Manager Zhao was noticeably more cordial with Li Fan, offering an extra word of advice. "Keep this spirit talisman safe. From now on, it will be your proof of identity. You'll need to present this spirit talisman for all matters on the island, big or small, such as receiving work, collecting grain, and undergoing inspections. Do not lose it." This drew sidelong glances from Sun Jiang and the others. Why is Steward Zhao being so cordial to this Li Fan, explaining so much? The distribution of residence permits was smooth and efficient. Soon, everyone in the group held their Lily Island spirit talismans. Excitement was plain on every face. They left the place but did not return to the previous cave. Instead, Sun Jiang led them to the large courtyard of a residence. Sun Jiang said, addressing Su Changyu from the group, "Now that the household registrations are in hand, we can sign the contract, can't we?" Su Changyu carefully withdrew a thin sheet of paper from his robes. He then bit his finger and solemnly wrote his name in blood. After it burned, only a final small fragment of the contract remained. Su Changyu said, his tone neither subservient nor arrogant, "It's the so-called 3 contracts to finalize in the future. Once we are completely settled, I will sign the final contract as promised." Sun Jiang snorted, clearly dissatisfied. "Humph, dealing with you people from the departed realm is such a hassle. If it weren't for the sake of the immortal master, our Tianbao Lu would never engage in such an unprofitable business." But he didn't say anything more on the matter. Instead, he began instructing everyone on the things they needed to pay attention to while living on the island. All residents of Lyle Island can claim a place to live using their household registration spirit talisman. In addition, during the first year of registration, you can receive a certain amount of grain for free each month. Suddenly, Su Changyu spoke up, "I wonder, what must we do if we wish to cultivate?" This was precisely what Li Fan had been waiting to hear. He pricked up his ears, listening intently. Sun Jiang glanced at Su Changyu, explaining patiently, "You mortals who have returned from the land of exile have a much higher concentration of miasma in your bodies than ordinary people. If you want to cultivate, you must first dispel the miasma from your bodies." Su Changyu frowned. "We are already aware of this matter. But how can this miasma be removed?" Sun Jiang said, "There are several methods to remove the miasma. The first is the island's body-purifying spirit pool. Soaking in the spirit pool for a day and a night can completely remove all the miasma from your body." Sun Jiang shook his head. "Unfortunately, the materials required to open the spirit pool are astonishingly expensive. Although our Liuli Island is wealthy, we can only open it once every 3 years. Let me think. The last time it was opened was a year ago, which means we'll have to wait about 2 more years for the spirit pool to open again. Besides, the number of spots available for the spirit pool is limited, and competition is fierce. How could outsiders like you with no foundation possibly compete with the people of the island?" Su Changyu pressed, "What about the other methods?" Sun Jiang continued, "The second method is to cultivate the profound yellow heart crease incantation. Paired with specific medicines and diet, you can gradually change your constitution over time and eventually clear out the miasma completely. Although this method is time-consuming, often taking 5 or 6 years, its advantage is its stability. Or how does it recruit any special price to be paid? The profound yellow heart cleansing incantation and its corresponding elixirs can be bought at the island's pharmacies." 5 or 6 years, Su Changyu murmured softly, then asked stubbornly, "Are there any others?" "The third method is to become a test subject." At this, Sun Zheng's expression darkened, and a flicker of barely suppressed fear crossed his features, but he still answered Su Changyu. Su Changyu looked bewildered. "Test subjects?" "That's right. Some immortal masters are very interested in the miasma inside a mortal's body. Every year, volunteers are selected from the mortals on the island to serve as test subjects. The immortal masters use special methods to extract the miasma from the test subjects' bodies for research. It only takes a few months to completely drain the miasma from a test subject's body. Sun Zhang's face seemed to pale, as if recalling something. However, the process is excruciatingly painful. It's a state of being unable to live and unable to die. Often, the vast majority of people can't endure until the miasma is fully extracted and are driven completely mad by the torture. It was unclear if Su Changyu had truly taken in Sun Zhang's warning. He remained silent for a moment before asking again, "Aren't there any other methods?" Sun Zhang shook his head. It's said that the direct mortal descendants of those immortal masters can rely on heavenly materials and earthly treasures to reconstruct their bodies. Not only would they no longer have to worry about the affliction of miasma, but they could also improve their cultivation aptitude. However, such methods are beyond your imagination. Even our island lord of Lyell Island doesn't receive such treatment. This is all I know. If you truly wish to cultivate, you should all think it over carefully in the coming days. Sun Zhang noticed Su Changyu's despondent expression and couldn't help but offer consolation. I know you've all returned from the land of exile after enduring countless hardships, and you all have a heart that yearns for the Tao. Who among us wasn't like that in the beginning? Sun Zhang comforted Su Changyu, though perhaps he was also comforting himself. Unfortunately, the path of immortality is incredibly difficult. Even if you can remove all the miasma from your body, very few can sense the spiritual energy of heaven and earth and guide it into their bodies. Why seek out trouble? There's nothing wrong with being immortal. Instead of bitterly pursuing the path of immortality, it's better to enjoy life, indulge your passions, and live in the moment. With these words, Sun Zhang departed. Among the gathered crowd, some wore expressions of delight, appearing to take Sun Zhang's advice to heart. Others, unable to accept the sheer difficulty of cultivation, broke down in tears on the spot. Meanwhile, some were fraught with worry, unsure of what to do. Only Su Changyu's face held a steely resolve, as if he had quietly made some firm decision. Only Su Changyu's face held a steely resolve, as if he had quietly made some firm decision. Li Fan presented his spirit talisman, and was led by someone to the residential district in the northern part of Liuli Island. Li Fan presented his spirit talisman and was led by someone to the residential district in the northern part of Liuli Island. Most were single-room structures, but each had a small courtyard enclosed by walls, so it didn't look too shabby. Row 6, Unit 7, this is it. The man handed Li Fan the key impatiently before hurrying off. The room was sparsely furnished, just a bed and a few tables and chairs. It was a far cry from what he was accustomed to. But he paid little mind to such material comforts. After a quick tidy-up, Li Fan settled down to contemplate his next move. It's all thanks to those people from the departed realm. Unfortunately, aside from Su Changyu, this group seems to be entirely mediocre, with no heart for the Tao, incapable of achieving anything great. My immediate goal is to purge the miasma from my body. A spot in the body purification spirit pool may be valuable, but the treasures held in the Taiyan boat should be more than sufficient. Securing a spot won't be difficult if I bring them out. The downside is drawing too much attention. As the saying goes, wealth should not be flaunted. As an outsider with no roots here, suddenly revealing such riches would inevitably attract unwanted attention. I'll need to plan this carefully. Suddenly, a knock at the door interrupted Li Fan's thoughts. Li Fan instantly grew wary. Who's there? It's me. The voice was low, yet vaguely familiar. Without changing his expression, Li Fan took out a dagger from the Taiyan boat, and concealed it in his sleeve. Li Fan cracked the door open just enough to see his visitor. It was that chubby youth who had tried to accost him earlier. Without hesitation, Li Fan moved to slam the door shut. Wait, the youth blurted, hastily wedging a hand in the gap and lowering his voice to a conspiratorial whisper. You're not from Li World, are you? What? Li Fan faltered for an instant. The chubby youth seized the opening to shove his way inside. He looked Li Fan up and down, a sly, predatory glint in his eyes. Who are you, and what is your purpose in sneaking onto Liuli Island? Li Fan countered. How did you know I'm not from the departed realm? The fat man's face twisted into a sneer. When we fell into the water, I vaguely saw you suddenly emerge from underwater. At first, I thought it was an illusion. Later, after thinking it over carefully, I realized you weren't in our group when we left the departed realm. The chubby youth puffed out his chest, oozing smug satisfaction. Li Fan conceded with a nod. It seems you're quite astute and sharp-minded. That chubby fellow added, of course, besides me, not a single one of those idiots noticed a stranger had snuck in. Li Fan pressed. Are you sure no one else besides you noticed? Of course not. How could those fools compare to this young master? The chubby youth's boast died in his throat, choked off mid-sentence. A cold, sharp blade had already pierced through his chest. Li Fan looked down at the chubby youth's body crumpled on the floor, his own face an impassive mask. Li Fan closed the door, dragged the chubby youth's corpse into the Taiyan boat, truly clueless. Relying on a bit of cleverness, you discovered I might have snuck in under a false identity, and you couldn't wait to come and threaten me. You don't even stop to think, didn't you people from the departed realm also get your household registration by falsely claiming to be refugees? Now that you have a Liuli Island household registration, you really think of yourselves as natives. That immortal master whose face was unclear, the one who came to meet you, and Sun Zheng's Tianbao Lu, they all acted very cautiously, afraid of being found out. Clearly, the identity of being immortal from the land of exile is something that must be kept secret. Tianbao Lu and that group from the departed realm wouldn't dare to investigate this with great fanfare. Even if they investigate and find out the fatty came to see me before he disappeared, now that not even a body can be found, as long as I insist I never saw him, they can't do anything to me. Just as Li Fan predicted, several days passed without anyone paying attention to the chubby youth's mysterious disappearance. Aside from a single inquiry from Su Changyu, this incident was merely a small interlude in Li Fan's life on the island, and he soon put it out of his mind. Li Fan spent his time gathering information about various matters on the island. At the same time, he considered how he could use the treasures stored in the Taiyan boat in a manner that wouldn't raise eyebrows. Gradually, Li Fan developed a general understanding of Liuli Island. The sea surrounding the island was known as the Tsongyan Sea. This Tsongyan Sea was vast and boundless, dotted with tens of thousands of islands, both large and small. Liuli Island was located in the southern part of the central Tsongyan Sea region and was considered a medium-sized island. It was named after the Liuli fish, a species abundant in the surrounding waters and known for its exceptionally tender flesh. Liuli fish were not only popular among mortals on nearby islands, but immortal masters as well. This was because the Liuli pearls occasionally found within them were used to refine a certain type of pill. Therefore, an immortal master was stationed on Liuli Island, and every year, a certain quantity of Liuli pearls had to be presented to them as tribute. Heading out to sea to catch Liuli fish was the most popular. Not only was it relatively low risk, but the pay was excellent. Fishermen only had to surrender 70% of their catch. They could keep the remaining 30% to sell privately. This made fishing a highly coveted job. Unfortunately, going out to sea requires large boats, and the schools of Liuli fish are unpredictable. Finding the schools requires a special spirit lure from the island. The spirit lure is only distributed by the Liuli Manor when going out to sea and is collected upon return. Private fishing is not allowed. If caught, the penalty is immediate execution. Therefore, fishing for Liuli fish can only be done with permission from the Liuli Manor. Recently, a ship that set out not only returned with a bountiful haul of Liuli fish but also chanced upon a shipwreck. The sunken vessel was reportedly carrying a family fleeing a storm flood, and it held over a dozen chests of gold, silver, and jewels. The island's rule for items salvaged from wrecks was the same as for Liuli fish. The crew could keep 30% for themselves. The island's rule for items salvaged from wrecks was the same as for Liuli fish. The crew could keep 30% for themselves. Watching the crew members grinning so wide it threatened to split their faces, many on the island grew green with jealousy. They began scrambling in private, pulling strings and calling in favors, all desperate to secure a spot on the next voyage. As long as he could go out to sea alone, he would be able to launder the treasures from the Taihang Ark by staging a shipwreck. The only difficulty was how to obtain the qualification to sail alone. There were far too many people on the island vying to join the fleet. After some casual inquiries, he learned the key. The island lord of Lili Island has 3 trusted aides. Steward Zhao is in charge of personnel, Steward Qian is in charge of finances, and Steward Zhou is in charge of security. The vast majority of spots for the fleet's sea voyages are in Steward Qian's hands. Steward Zhao and Steward Zhou have always wanted to get involved, but Steward Qian has maintained tight control, only allocating 1 or 2 fleets to them. Recalling Manager Zhao's reaction to him on the day he registered for residency, Li Fan thought it might be worthwhile to pay this Manager Zhao a visit. But Manager Zhao wasn't someone the current Li Fan could simply meet on a whim. Li Fan decided his best approach was still through Sun Zhang of the Tianbao Pavilion. After finding out its location, Li Fan went to the Tianbao Pavilion's entrance, seeking an audience with Sun Zhang, but he was met with a shut door. Several men in black at the entrance glared at Li Fan with ill intent, looking ready to fight at the slightest provocation. What kind of status does Elder Sun have? Is he someone you can see just because you want to? Leave immediately. Seeing this, Li Fan had no choice but to leave. Frustrated, he found it strange. Heavenly Treasure Tower is open for business after all. Where is the logic in driving people away without even seeing them? And these men in black made the decision without even asking for instructions, as if they already knew who I was. Could it be that something changed with the departed realm people, causing Sun Zhang to turn hostile and ignore me? After some investigation, Li Fan learned what had happened. It turned out that Su Changyu, in his determination to purge the miasma from his body as quickly as possible, had resolutely chosen to become a test subject for an immortal master. Before leaving, Su Changyu had signed his name on that remaining part of the contract. With that, the 3rd stage was complete, and the contract dissipated entirely. There was no longer any connection between Li World and the Tianbao Pavilion. Li Fan remarked with a sigh, "No wonder they suddenly turned hostile and deliberately avoided us. I just didn't expect Su Changyu to be so decisive. I advised him not to be so hasty, but why would he listen?" The speaker was someone Li Fan recognized, Xiaohun, who had previously identified himself in the Tianbao Pavilion's cavern as the Prince of Jinnan's son. If it weren't to save his terminally ill sister, Brother Su wouldn't have been so desperate. Xiaohun seemed to share an exceptionally close bond with Su Changyu, and now radiated utter dejection. Hearing this, Li Fan fell silent, lost in thought. Though Sun Zhang tried to avoid him, Li Fan refused to give up. From the comforting words he'd given Su Changyu, it was clear Sun Zhang wasn't a villain. His earlier coldness was merely to distance himself from mortals of the immortal Forsaken Lands. Li Fan preferred dealing with someone whose character he could somewhat read over a total stranger. Thus, he turned back and once more and stood in front of Tianbao Pavilion. The black-clothed guard at the entrance glared at Li Fan with open hostility. "You kid, why are you back again? Are you looking for death?" Li Fan smiled faintly. He deliberately raised his voice, drawing curious glances from passers-by. "I came to do business with your Heavenly Treasure Tower. You want to drive me away without even talking. Is this your Heavenly Treasure Tower's way of treating guests?" He guard's face flushed with anger, and he moved to strike, but was held back by his companion. After a servant went inside to inquire, the guard returned with obvious reluctance and led Li Fan in. He was seated in a guest room, where a female attendant served him a cup of tea. Li Fan took a sip. The tea warmed his stomach, and a comforting heat instantly spread through his entire body. "Good tea," Li Fan couldn't help but praise. A man walked in with a smile, speaking unhurriedly. It was Sun Zhang. "Dayu Pale Dragon grows on the submarine volcanic craters around Dayu Island. There are only a dozen or so plants. Now, with the destruction of Dayu Island, this Dayu Pale Dragon has temporarily become a unique rarity. Then I am basking in your light, Elder Sun." Li Fan showed no hesitation, downing the remaining tea in one gulp. Only after Li Fan set the cup down did Sun Zhang narrow his eyes and ask slowly, "The matters of Dali are finished. There should be no more entanglements between you and me. Why have you sought me out again now?" His tone was blunt, and his eyes hid a sharp killing intent, as if Li Fan's answer would determine whether he lived or died. Ignoring the accusatory tone, Li Fan smiled in response. "Elder Sun has misunderstood. I am indeed here to discuss a business deal." Sun Jiang first looked stunned, then scoffed, scrutinizing Li Fan from head to toe. Business? You? Li Fan's expression remained unchanged, his smile unwavering. Seeing this, Sun Jiang gradually grew serious. What business? Li Fan said slowly. I wonder if Heavenly Treasure Tower is interested in a quota for the seafaring fleet. Sun Jiang slowly spoke. Every time the fleet goes out to sea, not to mention the treasures that can be salvaged, just the lily fish and other marine specialties are enough to make a fortune. If I said our Heavenly Treasure Tower wasn't interested, that would be impossible. Sun Jiang stared intently at Li Fan, as if trying to read the truth from his face. But the fleet quotas are firmly controlled by Steward Qian, let alone our tower. Even Steward Zhao can only get 1 or 2 spots. You are a newcomer. What ability do you have to dare scheme for it? Li Fan stated with unwavering confidence. If you let me see Steward Zhao, I have my own way to persuade him. Seeing Li Fan's absolute certainty, Sun Jiang momentarily wavered, unsure how to proceed. Just then, a somewhat languid voice drifted in from outside the room. Then let him see Steward Zhao. It's not a difficult thing. If it fails, chop him up and throw him into the sea to feed the fish. Li Fan's eyes sharpened as he saw a woman in clothes yellow robes step inside. Her face was veiled, and her voice sounded young, perhaps 17 or 18, but her curvaceous figure radiated a mature allure. Greetings, shopkeeper, Sun Jiang said immediately, rising to his feet and offering a respectful bow upon seeing the woman in yellow. Then I thank you in advance, shopkeeper, Li Fan said, his expression unchanged as he cupped his hands in a salute. The woman in yellow said, tilting her head as she sat down opposite Li Fan, You seem to have some confidence. It doesn't look like you're talking big. Li Fan stated plainly, This humble one always keeps his promises, my word is my bond. The woman in yellow let out a soft, tinkling laugh. If it really succeeds, my Heavenly Treasure Tower will want to extract a corresponding benefit. Li Fan nodded, his words startling everyone present. According to the island's rules, 3/10 of the harvest from each voyage can be kept for oneself. I don't want a single cent of those 3/10. Half goes to Steward Zhao, and half goes to your Heavenly Treasure Tower. The woman in yellow was momentarily stunned. She looked him over again, more carefully this time. That's strange. In that case, going to such great lengths, what is it that you want? Li Fan stated frankly. I only want the quota to enter the body-purifying spirit pool once every 3 years. Eh? The woman was truly shocked now. She stared at him for a long moment, as if trying to confirm she hadn't misheard. Li Fan met her gaze without the slightest hesitation. The woman in yellow burst into uproarious laughter, as if she just heard the most hilarious joke in her life. Ha ha ha, please, uncle, you're already at this age, and you still want to learn from others to cultivate immortality. She laughed for a good while, barely managing to get the words out before another wave of laughter overtook her. Sun Jiang looked at Li Fan, his face also a mask of utter skepticism. Li Fan said quietly, Only seeking eternal life? I will not regret it even if I die. The woman in yellow fell silent for a long time. She declared finally, Good, I agree to this matter. Wait until a date is set, I will send someone to notify you. In that case, it is settled. I live in house number 7, 6th longitudinal outside the city. You can find me there. Li Fan cupped his hands once more, turned, and left. After a long silence, Sun Jiang could no longer hold back. Shopkeeper, about that spot in the body-purifying spirit pool. The woman in yellow calmly replied, Although the competition for spots in the body-purifying spirit pool is fierce every year, my Heavenly Treasure Tower is not without the strength to compete. She revealed a confident smile and continued, If he can truly secure a seafaring fleet, then in just 5 years, the profits brought by the fleet would be enough to cover the cost of a spot. This business is a sure win with no loss. However, she frowned, a delicate crease forming on her brow as she looked in the direction Li Fan had departed. What is it? Sun Jiang couldn't help but ask. That man's eyes looked quite scary. The woman in yellow patted her chest lightly, as if still somewhat shaken. Sun Jiang's face froze stiff, rendered speechless. On the way back, he stopped by a pharmacy and purchased the profound yellow heart-cleansing incantation along with the matching medicinal herbs. Even if everything went smoothly, it would still be 2 years before the body-purifying spirit pool opened. He might as well try cultivating it first to see the effects. Perhaps he, Li Fan, possessed astonishing natural talent, and could purge the miasma from his body on his own, without needing the full 2 years. For the next few days, he stayed at home cultivating, waiting to meet Steward Zhao. Who would have thought that before he even met Steward Zhao, he would hear a rather shocking piece of news. Su Changyu was dead. In the end, Su Changyu simply wasn't able to hold on. He reached his limit and died in just 7 or 8 days. When his body was brought back, Li Fan went to take a look. It was a truly horrifying sight. These people from the departed realm were newcomers and couldn't even scrape together enough money to buy a grave plot. They had originally planned to bury him at sea. But he couldn't bear to watch that, so he took out some money to let Su Changyu rest in peace in the earth. Everyone was heartbroken. Among them, Xiaoheng wept the most bitterly. Li Fan, however, didn't have any particularly strong feelings, just a faint sense of melancholy. In his eyes, Su Changyu had carried himself well and possessed considerable mental fortitude. While not a once-in-a-century prodigy, he was certainly no mediocre man. Of the entire group from the Li world, Li Fan had thought him the most likely to make something of himself. Yet such a man died silently and without fanfare, unable to clear the preliminary hurdle of dispelling miasma. The path of immortality was arduous. Li Fan felt this truth more keenly than ever. And as he continued his cultivation of the profound yellow heart-cleansing incantation, this feeling grew even more. The facts proved that Li Fan was no unparalleled genius either. For nearly a month, he lived in seclusion, cultivating the heart-cleansing incantation every day. Generally speaking, even those with mediocre aptitude would see obvious effects, such as improved spirits and sharper thinking, after cultivating it for half a month. But a month passed, and surprisingly, he didn't feel any changes. Li Fan wasn't anxious, simply treating it as a daily cultivation ritual to perform. Another half-month passed like this before Li Fan finally received a summons from the Tianbao Pavilion. Following the messenger, Li Fan met Manager Zhao in one of Tianbao Pavilion's private courtyards. Li Fan said, cupping his hands in greeting, "Manager Zhao, it's been a while." Manager Zhao glanced at Li Fan and went straight to the point. "I heard from the people at Heavenly Treasure Tower that you want a spot for a seafaring fleet. Your appetite is quite big. What backing do you have?" Li Fan asked with a slight smile. "A fleet going out to sea seeks nothing but profit. I wonder, Manager Zhao, how do you think the profit from catching liliui fish compares to retrieving treasures directly from sunken ships on the ocean floor? Salvaging treasure is worth several regular fishing trips, but how could one encounter such a good thing every time?" Instead of dismissing Li Fan's words immediately, Manager Zhao considered them seriously for a moment. "I've been on this island for over a dozen years, and in my memory, there have only been a few scant times with major harvests." Li Fan continued, "If I were to command a fleet, I can guarantee that every time we go out to sea, we will bring back a certain amount of treasure." A strange light flickered in Manager Zhao's eyes as he scrutinized Li Fan closely. Then, he stroked his beard and muttered, unexpectedly, he didn't lie. Now it was Li Fan's turn to be surprised. "I indeed did not talk big. But I wonder how you figured that out, Manager Zhao?" Manager Zhao chuckled softly. "I was born with a pair of unique eyes that can recognize talent and distinguish truth from falsehood. Just now when you spoke, I only saw a soft white light emitting from your body, proving that your words were true and you harbored no ill intentions. To think there is such a unique art?" Li Fan was genuinely startled. "On the day of registration, Manager Zhao, your attitude toward me seemed slightly different from others. Did you see something then?" Manager Zhao explained with a wry smile. "I only saw that you were extremely wealthy and had quite a bit of blood on your hands, obviously not an ordinary person. That's why I was a bit polite to you, forming a good karma in passing." As he listened, a thought occurred to Li Fan. "In that case, on the day we registered, you realized that Sun Zhang from Heavenly Treasure Tower was not speaking the truth?" Manager Zhao said dismissively, "So what if it's true? So what if it's false? With an immortal master presiding over the island, we aren't afraid of trouble. As long as you mind your own business, nothing will happen to you. Besides, gathering refugees is also the immortal master's order. If Sun Jiang can bring so many refugees to my Lily Island, how could I make things difficult for him? Listening to this, Li Fan gained a general understanding of Manager Zhao's principles. I see, since Steward Zhao can see that I am not speaking falsely, can you consider the matter of the seafaring spot? Manager Zhao tapped his fingers lightly on the table a few times before speaking. You are a newcomer with no foundation. If I rashly hand the fleet over to you, it will certainly cause much dissatisfaction. How about this? Next time the fleet goes out, you go with them. If you really can salvage treasure every time you go out, then in just a few trips, the crew will surely be convinced by you. At that time, you can take over the fleet justifiably. Finding the arrangement perfectly acceptable, Li Fan said, your considerations are thorough indeed, Manager Zhao. And so, the matter was settled with unusual smoothness. The Tianbao Pavilion was unaware of the specifics of their conversation, but when they learned that Li Fan had easily persuaded Manager Zhao and secured a spot on the next voyage, they were utterly astonished. In Tianbao Pavilion, the woman in yellow rested her chin on her hand. Her eyes glinting, she muttered, could it be that uncle wasn't talking big, and he really has the confidence to secure this fleet? Sun Jiang was equally baffled. I wonder what backing he actually has. The woman in yellow suddenly declared, send him the title deed for that vacant courtyard on East Street in the city. Huh! Sun Jiang was utterly shocked. Sun Jiang protested, his voice tight with reluctance. Shopkeeper, we spent a fortune to acquire that courtyard, preparing to use it to bribe Steward Qian. How can we just let him have it so cheaply? Even if we give it to him, we should wait until he helps us secure the fleet first. The woman in yellow shot Sun Jiang a glance. Just go if I tell you to. If we really wait until then, a mere small courtyard won't be enough to befriend him. Sun Jiang muttered a few complaints under his breath, but in the end, he didn't dare disobey the shopkeeper's order. He obediently delivered the deed to Li Fan. Li Fan didn't refuse it. He packed his few possessions and moved into the small East Street compound that very day. Compared to the slums outside the city, the surroundings here were immeasurably better. He declined the maidservants that Tianbao Pavilion later tried to send over. With that, Li Fan settled in, quietly waiting for the fleet's next voyage. Li Fan assumed it wouldn't take long, but an unforeseen event pushed the departure date into the distant, uncertain future. The windstorm has arrived. Instantly, the island descended into chaos. Panicked, fearful cries rose from all directions. For a moment, Li Fan was utterly bewildered. Then, he saw a blue curtain of light appear in the sky above Lily Island. The light curtain resembled a massive, upturned bowl spanning the entire landmass, enveloping everything on the island within it. A clear, crisp woman's voice rang out alongside the appearance of the light curtain. The Island Protection Grand Formation has been activated. There is no need to panic. Hide inside your homes. Do not go out. The mortals on the island dropped to their knees, clasping their hands in frantic gratitude. Immortal Master is merciful. Listening to the cries of relief rising around him, Li Fan lifted his head, studying the protective array intently. Concentric rings of ripples spread across the barrier, holding the deluge utterly at bay. Outside was a maelstrom of violent wind and lashing rain. Inside the dome of light, all was serene and still. Li Fan marveled inwardly. Outside is a violent storm, while inside is calm and tranquil. Is this the means of the immortals? Just as Li Fan thought the storm flood was about to pass, he suddenly sensed that something was wrong. A thunderous explosion detonated beside Li Fan's ear, deafening. Thunderous roars erupted simultaneously from all directions in a relentless, endless cacophony. It was like a symphony without end, reverberating between heaven and earth. Caught within this overwhelming noise, Li Fan felt dizzy, his vision spotting with stars. A great weight seemed to press on his chest, making it difficult to breathe. When he touched his nose, his hand came away wet with blood. A spike of fear shot through him. He thought to flee back inside for shelter, but the ground beneath his feet began to tremble violently. Li Fan looked up and saw a sight that stole the breath from his lungs. A wall of water, so high it blotted out his entire field of vision, was being driven by the furious gale toward Lily Island. In moments, it descended with an overwhelming, crushing force. Li Fan nearly believed his current lifetime was about to end. The barrier twisted and distorted, seemingly on the verge of shattering, but after a pulse of blue light rippled across its surface, it stabilized once more. It stood firm against the impact, unyielding as a seaside cliff. Eventually, the waves gradually began to subside, but subside was a relative term. They merely lessened from world-ending to terrifying. The storm flood had arrived with savage speed, but it departed with agonizing slowness. He heard from the islanders that this windstorm was actually on a relatively small scale. The windstorm 15 years ago had been several times more powerful than this one. At that time, the Island Protection Grand Formation could barely maintain itself and was forced to shrink its protective range. After the windstorm, Lioli Island's area had been reduced to only 1/3 of its original size. It took more than a decade of effort from survivors and new influxes of refugees before its vitality slowly recovered. Li Fan was shaken to his core, the wrath of the heavens and the earth. To think it could be so terrifying. In the days following the storm flood, every resident of Lioli Island received instructions. Each household was to inspect their section of the island protection array for damage. The method was simple. The Lioli administration distributed spirit talismans. Families simply had to hang one in their home for several days and nights, observing whether it emitted red light. All 367,800 nodes of the island protection array must be checked for anomalies. Under the Immortal Master's decree, and for the sake of their own survival, all other affairs on Lioli Island were suspended, with priority given to maintaining the array. Normally, the Immortal Master would oversee the inspection personally, but this time, the spirit stones powering the array were nearly depleted. Thus, the Immortal Master had returned to Myriad Immortals Island to procure more. Every 360 flashes of the talisman form a minor cycle of the array's self-inspection system. Li Fan recalled the instructions given with the talisman. 360 minor cycles form a major cycle. If no red light appears during a major cycle, the array is intact. Li Fan stared intently at the spirit talisman before him, a trace of admiration rising in his heart. This island protection array is immense, yet incredibly precise. It's difficult to imagine how it was constructed. 5 days later, the result allowed the entire population to exhale in relief. The island protection array was undamaged. When the Immortal Master returned with a sufficient supply of spirit stones, the residents' worries vanished completely. Life on Lioli Island gradually returned to normal. In the following months, survivors from other islands occasionally arrived on Lioli seeking refuge. Of course, the vast majority of people on their islands had perished in the recent storm flood. The Tsongyan Sea was vast and boundless, containing countless islands, large and small. Only islands that produced unique resources were fortunate enough to have an Immortal Master stationed permanently. During these few months, he didn't stay idle. He persisted in cultivating the profound yellow heart-cleansing incantation every day, and finally, there were results. Both his upper limit of psychological age and his psychological age had increased again. Though the margin wasn't large, it still filled him with energy. Another month passed in this manner until Li Fan finally received a message from Manager Zhao. The storm flood in the Tsongyan Sea had completely subsided. The fleet's next voyage would soon take place. Among the crew, many were setting out to sea for the first time like Li Fan. Their faces were alight with excitement, their eyes brimming with the hope of striking it rich overnight. Some sailor members showed visible worry and couldn't stop complaining. What in the blazes is the island master thinking, pulling a stunt like this? The ship with the smallest hull gets branded unfit and stripped of sailing rights for good? How are we supposed to swallow that? Sigh, don't even mention it. It's all because of that damned storm flood. You know Coral Island in the south? I heard in private that their island protection array shattered. The entire island was wiped flat, and the tribute they owed? It's been dumped on us, Lioli Island. What kind of situation is this? How will we live in the future? It's said that it's only temporary. We just need to make up for what was owed before. At that moment, Zhang Haobo, a man with sun-bronzed skin, strode over and began berating the sailor. Look at your cowardly appearance. Why don't you look on the bright side? Doesn't the first place also have a reward? The share of the harvest is increased from 30% to 50%. Boss, stop dreaming, first place? You know our fishing skills, we barely meet the quota every time, just managing to scrape by. Yeah, if you asked me, this is our last voyage. Blast it, why go back at all? Let's just turn pirate and live free. Hearing his sailor members endlessly complaining, Halba spoke up to reassure them. Don't worry, there's a capable person on the ship this time. I guarantee everyone will return fully loaded. With that, he pointed a thumb at Li Fan, who stood behind him. The sailors squinted at Li Fan, their faces instantly falling into expressions of disappointment. They shook their heads in disbelief. Just him? So pale and clean, has he ever been to sea? The man bellowed, his anger seemingly genuine. You blind fools, you don't recognize a noble person. This is a great talent specially invited by Manager Zhao, and he will take over our ship soon. You all be more polite. At these words, chaos erupted aboard the Tsengyuan. Boss, you've been the captain of this Tsengyuan for almost 10 years. How can you just give it up like that? Exactly. My life was saved by you, boss. If they want to drive you away, I, Lu San, will be the first to disagree. The sunbronze man glanced back at Li Fan, a conspiratorial smile briefly touching his lips. Humph. Why don't we just throw him into the sea to feed the fish once we set sail? It's perfectly normal for someone to die at sea anyway. The crowd on the ship was whipped into a fury. In an instant, Li Fan had unmistakably become public enemy number one. The man raised his hands, trying to calm them down. Calm down, everyone calm down. Although I know everyone thinks highly of me, Zhang Haobo, that Tsengyuan is Steward Zhao's property after all, and we are merely selling our lives for him. Now that Steward Zhao says he wants to change personnel, I have no choice either. His words only poured oil on the flames of their fury. The crewmen fixed their glares on Li Fan, their eyes burning with a murderous light. Li Fan sneered coldly in his heart. Zhang Haobo's petty tricks hadn't escaped his notice. Child's play. These were games Li Fan had long mastered. Showing no fear, Li Fan stepped forward to face the seething crew, holding his chin high. His voice rang out clear and strong over the din. Gentlemen, you don't trust me? Do you think Manager Zhao has bad eyes? Since I have already promised Steward Zhao that I can find treasure every time we set sail, I certainly won't let everyone down. Muttered discussions broke out among the men. Could it be that this kid actually has some skills? It should probably be true. Steward Zhao's eyes are incredible. There's basically never a time he looks wrongly. Meanwhile, Zhang Haobo seethed inwardly. He'll find treasure on every voyage? I don't believe it for a second. He's just using connections to steal my position as captain. Does he think I'm a fool? Watching his men swayed so easily by a few words from Li Fan, his anger burned hotter. Well, he's made his boasts. Let's see how he plans to back them up. Set sail, he roared. We depart. The Tsengyuan began to move, gliding out of the harbor without the need for wind or oar. Instead, the ship was propelled by a miniature array powered by spirit stones. Over 100 other ships also departed from Liuli Island, each heading for their designated fishing grounds. But the sea was vast, and the range of spirit lures was limited. Finding the general area where the fish schooled required a crew of experienced hands. In most normal years, the movements of the Liuli fish were predictable, making them relatively easy to catch. But in the event of a storm flood, the schools migrated, and all past experience became useless. It was like searching for a needle in an ocean, relying on nothing but pure luck. And the Tsengyuan's luck seemed exceptionally poor. More than half a month had passed. Aside from catching some ordinary fish and finding some common sea mineral deposits, they did not harvest anything significant. Not only were the crew members all frowning with worry, but even Zhang Haobo grew anxious. After all, there was a punishment for coming in last place this time. Zhang Haobo gazed at the calm, deep sea, feeling helpless. The rule on the island is to return within a month. We've only caught this little bit of stuff this time. It's quite possible we really have the smallest harvest. We can only hope for a turn of events in the next few days. May the immortal master protect us. Just then, he heard footsteps approaching from behind. Turning around, Zhang Haobo saw Li Fan walking toward him. Yo, what? You're finally willing to come out of the cabin. If you didn't still know to take food every day, I would have thought you died in there. Li Fan paid no attention to his words and said in a deep voice, I want a small boat. I saw treasure. What? Zhang Haobo was momentarily confused. But then it quickly dawned on him, and he exclaimed in disbelief, You're not joking, are you? Li Fan said solemnly. Quickly prepare a small boat for me. I saw jewelry shining with brilliance under the deep sea, waiting for me to salvage it. The opportunity is fleeting, the light of the treasures is becoming dim. I am about to lose its bearing. Zhang Haobo immediately snapped to attention. Quick, prepare the boat. Yes. After boarding the small boat, Li Fan turned back and said, You are not allowed to follow, wait for my signal. Haobo looked utterly bewildered. Why? Li Fan replied, You are too noisy, it's easy to interrupt my line of sight. Zhang Haobo's eye twitched, but thinking back to Li Fan's earlier glare, he couldn't shake the feeling he wasn't bluffing. One of the crewmen asked, staring anxiously in the direction Li Fan had disappeared, Boss, is it possible he ran away by himself? Zhang Haobo snapped at his subordinate. What silly talk, the sea is vast, and he didn't bring any dry rations alone, where could he run to? 2 hours later, a red signal flare lit up the distant sky. Zhang Haobo immediately commanded, Quick, steer the ship over there. The Tsengyuan sped forward at full speed and soon reached the location of the signal. There stood Li Fan on the small boat, exhaustion written across his face. He announced to the group, The treasure is right here. Zhang Haobo gritted his teeth and declared fiercely, Into the water, cast the net, yes. Amid the crew's half-doubtful gazes, they began to pull up one chest, then another. In the end, a full 16 chests of gold, silver, and jewels were slowly hauled up from the depths. Gazing at the mountain of treasures before him, Haobo was utterly overwhelmed. One of his subordinates cried out in ecstatic joy, Boss, Mr. Li didn't brag, he really allowed everyone to return fully loaded. At this moment, he was utterly shocked in his heart. It's real, he actually found treasure sunken at the bottom of the sea. A skill like that, a skill like that. He is an extraordinary person just like Manager Zhao. A wave of bitter regret washed over Zhang Haobo. Zhang Haobo, oh Zhang Haobo, it's rare to have a chance to meet a noble person. It's fine if you didn't grasp it, but you actually ridiculously thought the other party was here to snatch your tiny little fleet. The more he thought about it, the deeper his regret festered. He felt an intense urge to slap himself across the face. No, I must hurry and apologize, right now, immediately. As soon as Li Fan boarded the ship, Zhang Haobo earnestly came forward to bow and apologize to him. After dismissing him pleasantly, Li Fan returned to his room to rest. Having secured the treasure, the Tsengyuan abandoned all pretense of fishing. It immediately turned around and headed back to Liuli Island. After all, this haul was immense. Until they were safely back on the island, not a single soul aboard would feel at ease. Sailing at full speed, it took only 2 days before Liuli Island came into view. Zhang Haobo instructed his crew with grave seriousness. Don't dock just yet, Lu San. Slip into the water quietly and go notify Steward Zhao. Ask him to personally send people to do the inventory. Yes. Zhang Haobo spoke solemnly and continued. If nothing unexpected happens, our harvest should be the largest among the fleet that went out to sea this time. According to the rules, we get to keep 50%. If outsiders do the counting, they will inevitably deculp or miscalculate. I don't feel at ease unless it's our own people. Hearing this, the entire group of crews immediately roared in unison. The boss is right. Even losing a little bit would distress us to death. After waiting for some time, the Tsengyuan docked at the shore. The personnel for the routine inventory were blocked by Zhang Haobo and the crew members. A thread of anger laced the man's words. He seemed to have some history with Zhang Haobo. Zhang Haobo, what is the meaning of this? You won't let us board to take inventory. Seeing his lack of response, the man grew increasingly scornful. Judging by your ship's draft, I'm afraid you returned empty-handed this time. It seems your time as captain has come to an end. Hearing their captain insulted, the crew of the Tsengyuan flared with anger, ready to retort. What did you say? But Zhang Haobo held them back. There is no need to argue with him. No matter what the other side said after that, Zhang Haobo pretended not to hear, waiting quietly for Manager Zhao's subordinates to arrive. Li Fan observed from the shadows, nodding slightly. It seems there is a reason why Zhang Haobo can sit firmly in the position of captain of the Tsengyuan. It is only his background and experience that limit him. The commotion at the dock soon drew a crowd of onlookers. Many began pointing at the Tsengyuan and murmuring. Fortunately, The standoff did not last long. Soon, Manager Zhao arrived in person with his subordinates. As 16 crates of jewels and precious goods were unloaded from the ship in full view of the crowd, the entire dock erupted with excitement, and so, word of the Tsingyuan's immense harvest spread like wildfire, quickly sweeping across the entire island. In the Tianbao Pavilion, the woman in yellow was intently examining a newly acquired collection of artifacts when she heard the echoing of hurried footsteps outside. Without waiting for an invitation, Sun Zhang burst into the room. Shopkeeper, what is it? So flustered. The woman asked in surprise, what's going on? Sun Zhang gasped, struggling to catch his breath between words. Treasure, over 10 chests, Sang Yuan. She carefully wiped the jade vase in her hands, then calmly replied, it's just over 10 chests of treasure. What is there to make a fuss about? If they want to digest these things on the island, they still have to go through our Tianbao Pavilion's channels. She cut herself off mid-sentence, her expression shifting abruptly. Wait, did you say that Sang Yuan? Is that the ship where that uncle named Li Fan is staying? Sun Zhang nodded vigorously. That's right. No wonder that guy could persuade Manager Zhao. He was absolutely certain he would find treasure as soon as he went out to sea. This ability is just like our Tianbao Pavilion's grand shopkeeper. The woman in yellow quickly issued instructions. Go arrange it immediately. See when we can invite him for a meal. Also, send someone to clean up tower, and then send the title deed over to him. Yes, Sun Zhang started in surprise, but this time offered no argument, hurrying out to carry out his orders. Left alone in the room, the shopkeeper's whisper was barely audible. Could he be a spirit-channeling treasure physique? The legendary spirit-channeling treasure physique. As long as rare treasures exist within a certain range of oneself, one will sense them. The grand shopkeeper of Tianbao Pavilion, Ying, my older sister, possesses this special constitution. It is precisely by relying on this heaven-defying ability that my sister built Tianbao Pavilion, this large-scale chamber of commerce spanning the Zhongyan Sea, from nothing over the past dozen years. To think that another spirit-channeling treasure physique has appeared now. Li Fan was currently at Manager Zhao's residence. Manager Zhao said, beaming with satisfaction, you truly are extraordinary. Fishing up 16 chests of treasure on your first time out to sea, you really gave me a huge surprise. Li Fan simply smiled, offering no explanation. Knowing Manager Zhao had a knack for discerning the truth, he deftly changed the subject. The harvest this time was indeed substantial, but I'm afraid it will be hard to get this much in the future. Manager Zhao waved it off. That stands to reason. How could one have such luck every time? He took a sip of tea before continuing. However, just relying on the harvest this time is enough for me to operate a separate fleet for you. Li Fan clasped his hands and said, in that case, many thanks, Manager Zhao. Manager Zhao said abruptly, setting his cup down, I heard that you racked your brains just to seek a spot in the body-purifying spirit pool? Li Fan admitted with a sigh, looking as though a wave of profound weariness was washing over him. That is precisely so. Even with inexhaustible treasures, one will turn into a pile of yellow earth after 100 years. Only by seeking immortality and asking for the Tao, and witnessing eternal life, is this trip to the world not in vain. Manager Zhao studied Li Fan for a long, silent moment before finally sighing, at your age, to still have a heart that yearns for the Tao, I am inferior to you. A complex, almost pained expression flickered across his face, as if recalling a distant memory. Over 10 years ago, when I was the same age as you are now, I once saved an immortal master by a stroke of luck. The immortal master asked if I was willing to follow him to cultivate. Manager Zhao's voice grew heavy, but I knew I had long passed the best age for cultivation. Even if I cultivated, I might not achieve anything. Moreover, the older one gets, the more deep-rooted the miasma in the body becomes, and the more painful it is to remove. Now, as I get older, I vaguely feel regret, pity that there is no medicine for regret in this world. Among the hundreds of thousands of mortals on Lily Island, those like you are truly the minority. You flatter me, Li Fan said, steering the conversation back. I wonder regarding the matter of the quota for the body-purifying spirit pool, Manager Zhao. Manager Zhao explained, shaking his head, I cannot help you with this matter. The opening of the body-purifying spirit pool requires the island's immortal master to preside over it, and the quota is also decided by the immortal master. 1 year before opening the spirit pool, the immortal master will announce the required materials. Each family collects the materials on the list and hands them over. The quota is decided based on the amount of contribution points. He added, however, you don't need to worry, Tianbao Pavilion has open branches on every island in the Tsungyan Sea. If we talk about the ability to collect materials, there aren't many on Liuli Island who can compare to them. The image of the woman in yellow flashed in Li Fan's mind, Tianbao Pavilion. The moment he returned to his compound, Sun Zhang showed up at his door. He had clearly been waiting for some time. Your shopkeeper is looking for me for something? Coincidentally, Li Fan had been wanting to see her again anyway, so he readily agreed. As for the deed to the Quietude Manor that Sun Zhang had brought, Li Fan did not accept it. He wanted to meet with the woman in yellow first. In the room, there was only one person. She still wore the same yellow attire, but the veil covering her face had already been removed. I believe I haven't introduced myself properly, Yin Yuzhen, shopkeeper of the Liuli Island Tianbao Pavilion. Li Fan. Yin Yuzhen laughed lightly. Humph, uncle, you really are concise. Li Fan stated frankly, a mortal, there is really nothing worth saying. Spirit channeling treasure physique, is it not worth mentioning in uncle's eyes either? Yin Yuzhen asked. A teasing, almost challenging smile played on her lips. Li Fan said, oh? What's spirit channeling treasure physique? I don't know. Yin Yuzhen pressed, unconvinced. Then how did you find the location of the treasure in the vast sea? Just a feeling in my heart. Yin Yuzhen puffed out her cheeks, thinking to herself, you still say you aren't aspirate channeling treasure physique? But seeing that Li Fan genuinely seemed unaware, she reluctantly explained the nature of the treasure-attuned body to him. So you're saying, your sister is also a spirit channeling treasure physique? How old is she? What does she look like? Where was she 20 years ago? Where is she now? Li Fan asked several baffling questions in a row, leaving Yin Yuzhen thoroughly confused about his intentions. Abruptly, a possibility seemed to dawn on her. She stared at Li Fan, her face paling. Don't tell me, you're our long-lost father? But she quickly dismissed the idea herself. That's not right, you don't look anything like us. I'm just curious, Li Fan said dismissively, ignoring the girl's flighty train of thought. Yin Yuzhen nodded repeatedly, wearing an expression of deep understanding. Fine, curiosity about one's own kind, I get it. Yin Yuzhen sighed and began speaking slowly. We were originally from Yelan Island in the north. Our parents died in a disaster when we were young, leaving only my sister and me to depend on each other. In my memories, my sister and I could only rely on begging to survive every day, never knowing where our next meal would come from. Yin Yuzhen recalled. But starting from I don't know when, my sister could always find various valuable things in different places, so our days got better day by day. Later, my sister even established Tianbao Pavilion single-handedly. Her eyes filled with nostalgia. It's a pity that I haven't seen my sister for several years. Li Fan frowned. Where did she go? 3 years ago, my sister was chosen by a passing immortal master and taken away. At the beginning, she would send people to bring us messages to say she was safe. But later, we never heard any news from her again. Li Fan couldn't help but ask, taken away by an immortal master? Could it be he took her to cultivate immortality? Yin Yuzhen sighed. If only that were true. In the letters my sister sent back previously, she used a secret code only the two of us understand to tell me that her current situation was very dangerous, and if she stopped contacting me, it meant she might have met with misfortune. She told me not to go looking for her either. Hearing this, Li Fan asked, could it be the trouble invited by her special physique? She also felt puzzled. My sister is just a mortal. What she can sense are only things of some value to mortals. These treasures, in the eyes of those immortal masters, are no different from scrap metal. Yin Yuzhen sighed again, a deep sorrow flickering in her eyes. It's not like no immortal masters noticed my sister's special physique before, but none of them took it seriously. I don't know why she was taken away by that last immortal master. Although my sister likely bodes ill rather than well, the foundation she left behind is still here. The Tianbao Pavilion that my sister worked so hard to build cannot be destroyed in my hands. Yin Yuzhen continued explaining, I don't have my sister's miraculous ability. After my sister disappeared, Tianbao Pavilion's business got worse day by day, coupled with me misjudging a few items later on, leading to the loss of a large sum of money. The veterans of Tianbao Pavilion gradually became dissatisfied with me. They even want to conspire with outsiders to drive me out and carve up Tianbao Lu's assets. Fortunately, they still have some apprehension about my sister who was taken by the Immortal Master, so they haven't made a move yet. So, under the pretext of opening up markets, I came from Yelan Island to this Lily Island to lay low for a while. I originally intended to develop here for a few years and accumulate some strength before settling accounts with them, but I didn't expect to meet another spirit-channeling treasure physique on Lily Island. Yin Yuzhen grew visibly excited. If I have your help, I will definitely be able to regain control of the Tianbao Pavilion. Why should I help you? Li Fan remained unmoved. I have no interest in the Tianbao Pavilion's affairs. My only desire is to cultivate immortality. You promised that if I helped you secure a slot in the fleet, you would assist me in obtaining a spot in the body purification spirit pool. You haven't gone back on your word, have you? Yin Yuzhen seemed prepared for Li Fan's response. She nodded. We at Tianbao Pavilion always put integrity first in business. What we promise you, we will definitely do, but... She paused, a cunning glint in her eyes. Li Fan's expression darkened. But what? Yin Yuzhen chuckled softly. Uncle, even if you can enter the body-purifying spirit pool, so what? Expelling the miasma from the body is not an easy task. Every year, almost only half of the people who enter the spirit pool can succeed. Moreover, the older the age, the higher the probability of failure. Uncle, you aren't young anymore. Are you 100% sure you can succeed? Everyone only has one chance in their life to enter the spirit pool. If you fail, I'm afraid you will have to say goodbye to immortal cultivation forever. I'm aware the body purification spirit pool doesn't guarantee success, Li Fan said, his eyes narrowing as he watched her, but even a 50% chance is worth trying. Still, from the sound of it, you're suggesting. Yin Yuzhen's face lit up with the triumphant look of someone who knew she had hooked her prey. Exactly. She explained. Sent along with my sister's last letter was an elixir called the dust-leaving pill. According to what my sister said in the letter, as long as one takes this pill, the success probability of expelling the miasma from the body will greatly increase. If combined with the body-purifying spirit pool, even at your age, Uncle, there is a high possibility of success. Li Fan couldn't help but ask, with such a miraculous elixir, why haven't you taken it all this time? Yin Yuzhen replied, Uncle, not everyone is like you, obsessed with wanting to cultivate immortality. My wish is to do business well and protect the Tianbao Pavilion my sister left behind. Li Fan nodded slowly. Everyone has their own aspirations. Yin Yuzhen looked at him with hopeful eyes. So, Uncle, does this mean you agree? Li Fan pondered for a moment, not immediately committing. Let me go back and consider it. I will give you an answer in 3 days. All right, then, Uncle, I'll await your news. Though slightly disappointed, Yin Yuzhen nodded in acceptance. Farewell. Yin Yuzhen watched Li Fan's retreating figure, her expression turning serious as she mused to herself. I hope I didn't see it wrong this time. Li Fan made some discreet inquiries and confirmed that Yin Yuzhen had not lied about the dust-leaving pill. 3 days later, he met with her once more and agreed to her request. They settled on an arrangement. Before the body purification spirit pool opened, Li Fan would periodically help the Tianbao Pavilion acquire a certain quantity of treasures. When the spirit pool opened, Yin Yuzhen would then hand the dust-leaving pill to Li Fan. To show his sincerity, Yin Yuzhen took out the title deed for Quietude Manor. Since both sides had reached an agreement, he no longer stood on ceremony and accepted it into his possession. Thus, he moved once more. Quietude Manor, located in the very heart of Lioli Island, stood amid a bustling market yet felt as secluded as if it were deep in the mountains. During the year he lived at the Quietude Manor, Li Fan first completed 3 official voyages with the Lioli Islands fleet. Each time, he returned with several chests of treasure, shocking the entire island and successfully securing a ship's slot for the Tianbao Pavilion. After that, Li Fan accompanied the Tianbao Pavilion's ship on every voyage. By the year's end, the Tianbao Pavilion's profits were overflowing, nearly equal to the sum of their earnings from the previous 5 years combined. He had also built considerable prestige among the Tianbao Pavilion's members. Everyone who saw him regarded him with a mixture of respect and fear. However, he did not slack off on cultivation either. Over the past year, whenever he had free time, he painstakingly cultivated the profound yellow heart-cleansing incantation. Finally, something happened that filled him with joy. The charged progress of Return to Truth had accelerated. Before this, Return to Truth's charge could only increase naturally with the passage of time. Every 20 years, it would reach 100%, slowly climbing to 200% before no longer increasing. More than a year had passed since Li Fan left Great Xian and arrived in the world. According to past experience, the charging progress should have been between 6% and 7%, however. Li Fan was shocked to discover that the progress had actually reached 15%. The charging speed had nearly doubled. Aside from the heart-cleansing incantation, Li Fan had not come into contact with anything that could have caused this. Thus, the only explanation was that cultivating the profound yellow heart-cleansing incantation somehow accelerated Return to Truth's charging process. Beyond the charging progress, Li Fan's age limit had also increased significantly. Time flowed quietly by as Li Fan lost himself in cultivation. Soon, only a single year remained until the opening of the body purification spirit pool. Uncle, Liuli Island has announced a list of materials needed by the immortal masters this time. Li Fan was currently studying this list with the others from the Tianbao Pavilion. Sun Jiang spoke up. The materials needed this time are all quite common, except for this star sea quicksand which I haven't heard of. It seems the key to competing for the spot this time lies with this star sea quicksand. Yin Yuzhen said, I have never heard of this thing either. It looks like we'll have to ask someone from the Wanhua Trade Association. Sun Jiang sighed. These people are all reincarnated hungry ghosts, greedy beyond measure. I'm afraid we'll have to bleed heavily for this. Li Fan said firmly, no matter what, I must obtain the star sea quicksand. I am determined to get the spirit pool quota. The Wanhua Trade Association was not a local business of the Tsongyan Sea, but one hailing from a continent countless li away, rumored to have the backing of an immortal master. The association could easily cross the endless seas to do business in the remote Tsongyan Sea. Yin Yuzhen said, we still have a year to prepare. The merchant walker from the Wanhua Trade Association will pass by the Kangun Sea in 3 months. I can contact him then. Li Fan decided, his tone firm. We cannot place all our hopes on the Wanhua Trade Association. Liuli Island has taken in many refugees from all over the Tsongyan Sea in the past year. There might be someone who recognizes this star sequel. So we can ask around. Other factions on the island will also be looking for this star sea quicksand, so we need to monitor them closely as well. With the publication of the materials needed for the body purifying spirit pool, the matter spread across Liuli Island. Even some ordinary people who didn't care about this matter knew that the major factions on the island were now looking for something called star sea quicksand. Then, on this day, he received an unexpected visitor. It was Xiaoheng, someone from the Li world whom Li Fan had met when he first arrived in the cultivation world. Li Fan asked amiably, I wonder what business this little brother has with me. Xiaoheng first glanced around warily, then leaned in closer and said in a hushed tone, I heard that Brother Li is also looking for star sea quicksand recently? Li Fan's gaze sharpened. That is correct. I am old in age. If I want to cultivate, I can only rely on the body purifying spirit pool. Why, do you know this thing? Xiaoheng swallowed and nodded. Back when the immortal master descended upon our Dali, he promised that as long as we gathered the supplies he needed, he would take a group of people to the cultivation world. Among those supplies was star sea quicksand. Li Fan was taken aback, then said with some confusion, Oh? Why do I have no impression of that? Hearing this, Xiaoheng looked somewhat embarrassed. When it was announced to the world, the content on the list had already been reduced by a few items. As reserved quotas, they were distributed to the major noble families of Dali. What my Prince of Jinnan's manor was assigned to collect was this star sea quicksand. Li Fan asked, getting straight to the point. Speak, what are your conditions? Seeing how direct Li Fan was, Xiaoheng seemed a little ashamed. He explained, Back then, you paid to bury Changyu, which counts as a favor to me. I shouldn't be doing this. But life on this lily island is truly too hard to endure. I don't have great abilities like Brother Li. I am currently still living in the slums. As Xiaoheng rambled on, Li Fan interrupted him with a light laugh. Little brother, no need to say more. I understand your difficulties. I am determined to get this item. As long as you can provide a clue, ask for whatever you require, and I will do my best to satisfy it. Xiaoheng was immensely grateful. Then I thank you in advance, brother. He paused, then said with some emotion, Actually, this item isn't rare, it's just that the Immortal Master's name for it is different from ours. Actually, the so-called Star-Sea Quicksand is just meteorite iron from the sky. Li Fan listened, pondered carefully, then suddenly understood. Star-Sea Quicksand, so that's it, but will just any meteorite iron do? Are there any other special requirements? Xiaoheng nodded repeatedly. There are, brother, there are. Subsequently, Xiaoheng slowly explained the specific requirements one by one. First, the meteorite iron must have a good appearance. One with a pitted, cratered surface won't do. Second, a single piece must weigh at least 50 caddies. Also, Li Fan listened intently, committing each detail firmly to memory. When Xiaoheng finished, Li Fan did not forget his promise. Good, I know now. Speak, little brother, what do you want? Xiaoheng said quietly. I just want a decent courtyard. Plus a slightly easier job, of course. It would be even better if there were a few servants to help me manage the courtyard. Li Fan had braced himself for Xiaoheng to make an exorbitant demand, so seeing the other man so easily satisfied made him chuckle and shake his head in amusement. I never expected the son of the Prince of Jinan to have such modest demands. Feel free to ask for more. My words carry some weight at the Tianbao Pavilion. Xiaoheng politely declined. I know my own capabilities. Being able to eat well and live well, without living so tirelessly, is enough to satisfy me. If I suddenly possessed wealth that made others jealous, it would be easy to invite disaster instead. After exchanging a few more pleasantries, Xiaoheng took his leave. Li Fan asked suddenly as they parted, Do you have any plans to cultivate? After all, having gone through untold hardships to reach this cultivation world, you can't have made the trip for nothing, right? We'll see, Xiaoheng replied with clear disinterest, not even turning his head. I really have no interest in immortal cultivation. Reading that profound yellow heart-cleansing incantation makes me entirely. After seeing Xiaoheng off, Li Fan hurried to the Tianbao Pavilion. He found Yin Yuzhen and repeated Xiaoheng's explanation of Star-Sea Quicksand. Yin Yuzhen was surprised. Star-Sea Quicksand is meteorite iron? That simple? Li Fan stated. He shouldn't be lying, but we still need to verify it. Didn't you say the merchant walker of the Wanhui Trade Association is coming to Liuli Island soon? When the time comes, we might as well probe him for the truth. Yin Yuzhen agreed. That's a good idea. If we can save a sum of money, that would be best. Li Fan continued. No matter what, we still need to secretly purchase meteorite iron that meets the requirements. Right now, not many people know about this. But that might not be the case before long. Li Fan thought for a moment, then patiently added more instructions. Additionally, when purchasing, we must mix it with other items to deceive others and confuse the public. At the same time, we can order people to release fake news about Star-Sea Quicksand in the market to muddy the waters. After listening to Li Fan's methodical arrangements, a flicker of curiosity ignited in Yin Yuzhen's eyes. Uncle, you really aren't simple. Before, I only knew you had the spirit-channeling treasure physique. I didn't expect you to have a foolproof strategy for everything. She couldn't help but ask, Uncle, what did you do before? He only had 9 lifetimes as Grand Tutor, my baby. Li Fan said dismissively, just taught people to read. Yin Yuzhen's expression showed she didn't believe him. All right, I'll leave these matters to you to handle. I still need to cultivate. Unless there is a special situation, do not disturb me. By the way, handle the matter I promised Xiaoheng as well. Li Fan gave his final instructions and then left the Tianbao Pavilion. Yin Yuzhen stared blankly in the direction Li Fan had departed. Her eyes filled with utter bewilderment. Great auspiciousness. How can even a small matter like helping Xiaoheng be great auspiciousness? Has my seeking good fortune and avoiding evil malfunctioned? Although I don't have the ability to sense treasures like my sister, but since I was young, I have been able to foresee the auspiciousness and ominousness of events. Since meeting Uncle, my premonitions for every task he has assigned have shown signs of great auspiciousness. You must know, before meeting Uncle, I had never encountered a great auspicious event. Although I don't know what kind of achievements Uncle will have in the future, I trust my intuition and will do everything I can to help Uncle. Thus, under Inyushin's authorization, Tianbao Pavilion began to operate at full capacity. Tianbao Pavilion released a large amount of fake news about Starsea Quicksand. Knowing there might be a trap, other factions chose to wait and watch at first. However, one faction held the mindset of buy it first, even if it's fake we can sell it again, and purchased items related to the rumors on a large scale. Consequently, other factions couldn't sit still and joined the purchasing army. For a time, prices on Lily Island skyrocketed, and chaos ensued. Meanwhile, Li Fan, the architect of this turmoil, remained within the quietude manner, quietly cultivating. 3 months passed before Inyushin finally made contact with the commercial agent from the Wanhua Trade Association. At dawn, she and Li Fan boarded the Tianbao Pavilion's private vessel and left Lily Island, their ship laden with goods for the transaction. After sailing north for dozens of li, they reached the designated meeting point. They saw a flying boat abruptly appear in the sky. A boisterous laugh echoed from the flying boat once it stabilized. Ha ha ha, shopkeeperine, long time no see. The vessel measured roughly 50 meters long, about half the size of the tie-in boat's intermediate configuration. It descended swiftly, coming to a graceful halt upon the water's surface. Inyushin glanced at Li Fan, expecting to see astonishment on his face. To her surprise, he showed no reaction whatsoever, as though flying boats were an utterly mundane sight. Disappointed yet increasingly curious about the man, she turned toward the source of the voice. Inyushin replied with a smile, "Merchant Walker Wu, the last time we met was 3 years ago." "I am me flies indeed," Merchant Walker Wu remarked nostalgically while stepping onto the Tianbao Pavilion's deck. Noticing Li Fan, he asked genially, "Time really flies, and this is?" Inyushin answered succinctly, "An elder hired by our Tianbao Pavilion." Sensing her reluctance to elaborate, Merchant Walker Wu tactfully changed the subject. A pleasure, shopkeeperine. Let's go check the goods first. I'm afraid that after this time, it will be difficult for us to meet again." Inyushin froze. "What do you mean by that? Has some unforeseen incident occurred?" Merchant Walker Wu shook his head. "I don't know the specific reason either. I just suddenly received a notification from headquarters a few days ago. All merchant walkers in the Tsongyan Sea must cease all operations and return as soon as possible. If I hadn't already scheduled this trade with you, I'm afraid I would already be on my way back, so we cannot delay this transaction, we must make haste." Inyushin felt a wave of panic. The reason Tianbao Pavilion has been flourishing on Lyle Island is because it is backed by the Wanhua Trade Association. Now that the Wanhua Trade Association is suddenly withdrawing from the Tsongyan Sea, what will happen to Tianbao Pavilion's business in the future? Why was there absolutely no reaction from my seeking good fortune and avoiding evil this time? Merchant Walker Wu, seeing the stunned Inyushin, called out to her, "Shopkeeperine?" Inyushin forced a smile and snapped back to attention. "Apologies, my mind wandered, let us go see the goods now, please." She entered the ship's cabin and began inventorying the goods for the transaction. Li Fan led Merchant Walker Wu to the various goods: 16 pairs of jade discs, 23 pieces of coral, 46 luminous pearls. Li Fan reported calmly as they reached the center: Starsea Quicksand, 3 pieces. Merchant Walker Wu was utterly astonished. "What, let me see." He hurried over to the pieces of meteorite iron, gently stroking them with his hand before flipping them over to examine them from all angles. Watching this, Li Fan knew Agent Wu was no ordinary man. The lightest of these meteoritic iron pieces weighed at least 50 catties, yet they seemed like toys in the other man's hands. After a moment, he reluctantly set the iron down. His mouth kept praising without pause. "Good, good, good. Shopkeeperine, you have good luck this time. To think you actually collected such fine items as Starsea Quicksand." Li Fan and Inyushin exchanged a glance, a wave of relief washing over them. They could now confirm that Xiao Heng's information was correct. The remaining items weren't particularly valuable. Merchant Walker Wu was very satisfied with the goods the Tianbao Pavilion had provided. Perhaps because the two parties wouldn't be able to meet again for a long time, he invited Li Fan and Yin Yuzhen onto the Wanhua Trade Association's flying boat as special guests. After food and drink, Merchant Walker Wu led the two to the flying boat's storage warehouse. These are all things I bought while visiting various islands in the Tsongyan Sea. Some are priceless. While I'm unclear about the function of others, I just bought them because they looked peculiar. If you two are interested, you can pick a few items from among them. Yin Yuzhen was visibly excited upon hearing this. Heavens, with my seeking good fortune and avoiding evil, isn't coming here like a rat falling into a jar of rice? Li Fan had no interest initially, but seeing Yin Yuzhen's eager expression, he didn't refuse. He accompanied her, idly browsing through the warehouse. You only have the time of one stick of incense. Uncle, look at this jade bracelet, it's so beautiful. The material isn't bad. This Merchant Walker Wu, while clearly possessing physical strength far beyond an ordinary man, was obviously not a cultivator, and his business was firmly rooted in the mundane world of mortals. How could there possibly be anything here worth Li Fan's attention? Just as that thought crossed his mind, Li Fan's fingers brushed against one particular object, and his entire body went rigid. A prompt from Return to Truth had abruptly flashed before him. Discovered item convertible to charge. Proceed with charging? Curio of heaven and earth, deep sea pearl, nascent. As one sea perishes, another is born. Li Fan was utterly astonished to encounter a curio of heaven and earth here, and one that was still nascent, not yet fully formed. Suppressing his excitement, Li Fan placed the deep sea pearl back in its original spot. He then feigned indifference, and began examining the other items nearby. He did not cast another glance at the pearl, even when Agent Wu announced that time was up. Yin Yuzhen emerged, carrying a few items, her expression a mix of regret and excitement. Noticing Li Fan's empty hands, she spoke up, "Aren't you going to pick a few items? It's rare for Merchant Walker Wu to be so generous. This opportunity won't come again." Merchant Walker Wu chimed in, "Shopkeeper Yin is right. There's no logic in entering a treasure mountain and returning empty-handed. Wouldn't that be looking down on this Wu? Go pick some more." Li Fan thought, "Good thing you two spoke up, otherwise, I would have had to bring it up myself." He said, "In that case, it would be rude to refuse." He walked over to the deep-sea pearl, selected a jade statue nearby, and then casually picked up the pearl as well. "I'll take these too," Li Fan said offhandedly. Agent Wu glanced at it, and praised, "Good eye, elder. I found this ancient tree jade statue on a desolate island in the northernmost part of the Tsongyuan Sea. This jade statue was worshipped by a primitive tribe on the island for thousands of years and is quite miraculous. If a normal person keeps it at home, it has the effect of carrying the mind and strengthening the body." "And what about this one?" Li Fan asked, toying with the deep-sea pearl. "Oh, that one, I bought it from a fisherman on Liyun Island," Merchant Walker Wu said after a moment's recollection. Liyun Island, Li Fan committed the name firmly to memory. At this point, both sides concluded the transaction. The Wanhua Trade Association acquired a large batch of treasures, while Yin Yuzhen amassed a significant amount of gold and silver. Though Yin Yuzhen had reaped a substantial harvest this time, a worried frown still creased her brow on the journey back. Li Fan asked, "Are you worried about Tianbao Pavilion's future business?" Yin Yuzhen sighed. "Yes, without the Wanhua Trade Association, we've lost a crucial sales channel. I don't know why the Wanhua Trade Association would suddenly withdraw from the Tsongyan Sea." Li Fan could think of no real solution at the moment, offering only empty words of comfort. "The cart will find its way around the mountain when it gets there. There's no need to worry excessively." Equivalent to, "We'll cross that bridge when we come to it." Returning to Liuli Island, Li Fan bid farewell to Yin Yuzhen and hurried back to the Quietude Manor. Li Fan gazed at the pearl in his hand, unable to contain his joy. "My original purpose for this trip was simply to verify if Starseed Drift sand was meteorite iron. I never expected to gain such a treasure. What a stroke of luck. But I wonder what makes this deep-sea pearl so special? Why was this small, glazed pearl named Deep-Sea? Could it truly contain an entire sea within?" Li Fan held the pearl aloft. The more he examined it, the more entranced he got, losing himself in that profound, deep shade of blue. Li Fan was startled awake by a series of urgent knocks on his door. Li Fan thought to himself, "It's not even dawn yet. Who is coming to disturb me at this hour?" The ever-cautious Li Fan took a dagger, concealed it in his sleeve, and went to answer the door. "Who is it?" From outside came Xiao Heng's voice. "Brother Li, it's me." A flicker of confusion crossed Li Fan's mind, but he still opened the door and said, "Little brother, come in and talk." Xiao Heng's face was filled with anxiety and panic as he spoke urgently. "Brother Li, something terrible has happened. The fact that we smuggled ourselves here from the Li world has been leaked." "Who leaked it?" Li Fan asked, visibly surprised. Xiao Heng hurriedly explained. "We don't know who leaked it. But now the entire island knows we aren't natives of the major cultivation world and that we entered illegally through Tianbao Pavilion. They say the Immortal Master is furious and intends to arrest and execute us all. Some were so frightened that they took boats and fled under cover of night. As for the rest of us, we simply don't know what to do." Li Fan listened attentively, thought it over briefly, then gave a gentle laugh. "Relax, this isn't anything serious." Xiao Heng was stunned. "Brother Li, what do you mean by that?" Li Fan let out a cold chuckle. "Since when have authorities ever warned criminals ahead of an arrest? If they really planned to execute you all, your heads would already be rolling. Would they let you catch wind of it, slip away at night without hindrance, and even assemble to plot your next moves? In my opinion, this likely isn't about us at all. Their true target is the Tianbao Pavilion." Without explaining too much to Xiao Heng and simply telling him not to worry, Li Fan headed straight to Tianbao Pavilion. There, Yin Yuzhen angrily explained the full situation. The factions on Liuli Island discovered too late that Starseed Drift Sand was meteorite iron. Tianbao Pavilion had already taken it, and caused the earlier market chaos. When they complained, the island master defended Yin Yuzhen and reprimanded them instead. Furious, the factions later spread rumors that Tianbao Pavilion was involved in smuggling mortals. After understanding the situation, Li Fan snorted coldly and said, "They only want a share of the Starseed Drift Sand. We got there first and collected plenty. We'll just throw out a portion and let them scramble over it like hungry dogs. Before long, they'll start tearing each other apart. There's no such thing as a truly unbreakable alliance in this world." 3 days later, Tianbao Pavilion convened with the various factions on Liuli Island and laid out the following terms. First, it would hand over a portion of the Starseed Drift Sand, but only in exchange for goods of equal value. Second, the distribution of the Starseed Drift Sand would be left entirely to the other parties to settle among themselves. Finally, Tianbao Pavilion must be assured one position in the body purification spirit pool. The conditions were far from excessive. After a brief discussion, both sides swiftly came to an agreement. After all, there was no irreconcilable enmity between them. This was merely a contest over spots in the body purification spirit pool. In this way, by sacrificing several dozen pieces of meteorite iron, Tianbao Pavilion successfully extricated itself from the chaotic contention. Almost at once, the rumors of smuggling disappeared from the island. The other factions, now fully absorbed in battling over the meteorite iron, no longer had any energy left to target Tianbao Pavilion. Time passed by steadily, and the day of the body purification spirit pool's opening swiftly approached. Once it opened, he would be able to cleanse the miasma from his body and officially set foot on the path of cultivation. At this moment, Yin Yuzhen happily handed Li Fan a purple pill, the mundane leaving pill. The day of the spirit pool's opening finally arrived. Li Fan swallowed the mundane leaving pill given to him by Yin Yuzhen. Under the directions of a designated guide, he entered the array at the center of Liuli Island. Among the 13 who entered the central array, only Li Fan wasn't a teenager. They had been instructed not to speak carelessly, so they simply looked around with excited, curious eyes. The instant they entered the array, the scene around them transformed entirely. It felt as though they had been whisked in the blink of an eye from a crowded city to the depths of an ancient mountain forest. Towering trees and lush foliage surrounded them, while the air rang with the endless chirping of birds and insects. Far off, mist-wreathed peaks rose and fell in layers. A gentle breeze drifted by, carrying a ceaseless rustle like the sound of distant waves. Li Fan and the others stood at the base of the mountain. When they looked up, the peak was entirely concealed, swallowed by dense clouds. They began ascending the ancient stone steps. All these youths were in excellent physical shape. Even after 4 full hours of continuous climbing without a single break, none of them showed the slightest sign of fatigue. Li Fan, however, was already soaked in sweat. Being older and long unaccustomed to such exertion, he struggled to keep pace and was barely able to avoid falling behind. After 2 more hours of climbing, they finally arrived at the summit. The mountaintop was merely a modest clearing, so the group felt a bit cramped once everyone had spread out. This peak stood as the highest in the entire mountain range. Looking around, they saw nothing but an endless expanse of white clouds stretching out like a sea. The wind roared fiercely, stirring the clouds and from time to time unveiling distant mountain peaks that rose like islands above the mist. Came a voice from right beside them. "What do you make of the scenery?" The youths were startled for a moment, then quickly regained their composure. "Greetings, Immortal Master," they chorused, bowing deeply in unison. Li Fan followed suit. The one who had spoken was none other than Immortal Master He, the guardian of Liuli Island. He looked to be around 30 years old and wore plain blue robes. With kind eyes and a warm, smiling face, he radiated approachability and was the very image of a gentle soul. Seeing that this Immortal Master wasn't as intimidating as the legends made him out to be, one of the youths gathered his courage and replied, "The scenery is breathtaking, truly worthy of an immortal sacred land. I've never seen anything so wondrous and soul-stirring." Immortal Master he nodded with a gentle smile, but his following words instantly hushed the entire group. "When I first came to Liuli Island, this very mountain was the lowest in the entire range, rising far beneath the sea of clouds. Did you know that the mountains and rivers of this world can also grow taller over time, just as people do?" Hearing this, a nearby youth asked in astonishment, Is that truly possible? Could it be that these vast mountains and rivers are also living beings?" Immortal Master he continued, "Some peaks appear lofty, yet their potential is already spent, and they will never advance further. Others are mere hills now, but hold boundless potential. Who's to say they won't become pillars holding up the heavens in years to come? Take this Shaowei mountain beneath our feet. It was once utterly insignificant, yet after just a few decades, it now overlooks all other peaks. Of course, most are like the countless mountains beneath this sea of clouds, destined from start to finish to remain as supporting roles, silently gazing up at those above the clouds. If mountains are like this, how much more so humans? Today, you have the fortune of entering the body purification spirit pool and washing away the miasma within your bodies. Whether you choose the path of cultivation, aspire to the great Tao or eternal life, or pursue other achievements, it all comes down to your own destiny." Seeing the dazed and confused expressions of the youths, Immortal Master he sighed. "Regardless of what comes after, today you must give your all. That is all I will say. Now go." One impatient youth couldn't resist asking with excitement, "Immortal Master, where exactly is the body purification spirit pool located?" Although he hadn't fully understood the deeper meaning behind the Immortal Master's words, he realized that they were finally about to enter the spirit pool. "Right there." "Immortal Master," he said indifferently. Everyone followed his gaze. The spot he pointed to was beyond the mountain's edge, over the precipice of a bottomless cliff. A youth blurted out in shock, "Immortal Master, you must be joking?" Immortal Master his expression darkened. With a cold snort, the boy's head flew high into the air as his body crumpled to the ground. Throughout the process, the Immortal Master barely moved. Blood sprayed out, splashing onto those standing nearby. The abrupt burst of violence left the youths completely stunned. Some trembled uncontrollably, their faces turning ashen white as they clamped hands over their mouths to suppress screams. Others collapsed on the spot, their legs buckling beneath them. Still others fell to their knees, kowtowing desperately and pleading for mercy. The Immortal Master's gentle expression disappeared in an instant, replaced by a cold, detached gaze as he slowly looked over the trembling youths. "Let this serve as another lesson for you. On the path of cultivation, discernment is everything. Know whom you can afford to provoke, whom you must never offend, what words are safe to speak, and what must remain unspoken. Consider your every action with utmost care. When your Tao scatters and your life comes to an end, don't come weeping to me, complaining that I failed to warn you today. Li Fan watched the spectacle, observing the varied reactions. He knew that this lesson from Immortal Master he would leave a deep impression on them. It was not just the youths. Even Li Fan felt he had gained something from the Immortal Master's words. He bowed deeply to Immortal Master he, speaking sincerely, "Thank you for the lesson." Then he turned and strode toward the edge of the mountain. Before him stretched a sheer, bottomless cliff. One wrong step and death was certain. Yet Li Fan showed no hesitation. His expression stayed calm and steady as he took that first step forward.